Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show.
We are streaming live as the sun sets here in Los Angeles, California.
Yeah, and it's freaking, I don't know, 90 some degrees. I don't know.
I was going to have you report on the temperature, and I'm sure it's above 90.
Oh, dude, it's so hot. Especially here.
What's it read?
Oh, I got it down to like 84.
Oh, okay. You can at least breathe in that weather. That's okay. As long as the humidity's down, right?
Oh, yeah, no, this is actually, it's actually acts as a humidifier, so.
Right.
But, I mean, sometimes the humidity helps cool it down, though, too. A little bit.
Well, we'll try and stay cool for the show, but thank you for joining us, international guests. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are streaming live currently to the liveparanormal.com website and social media sites, as long as with the Parent Awakening social media sites and eventually website. We'll get that figured out.
Yeah, we'll be updating that. Crap. Yeah, I just got to get the get you on there. So we'll get it done. Hey, Stephanie, How are you doing?
Hey, Stephanie, thanks for joining us. So give me some gossip here. What's going on? What decisions have you made lately in conducting this new research that you're flying full speed ahead at? What have you decided?
So over the last week, I built my last 3 ghost boxes that were going out to the museum with Robert the doll. So damn, I don't even know. I think there's eight of my radios there now, or 8 of my boxes there now at that museum. I don't know.
He purchased a lot. He definitely purchased a lot of your stuff.
No, he keeps on purchasing them for his tours. So I guess they assign them to their guests and they use them during their tour. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, I sent out my last 3 radios, and I think that's going to be it for a while.
That's it. I tried to keep him going, but he's on to other research, so there's not a whole lot I can do. But I tried. I just let everyone know I tried.
Yeah, I'm kind of done with that.
Hey, Amanda, how are you? Thank you for joining us. Well, you know what? I look forward to joining you on this research and watching you progress and see what else becomes of it. And I'm sure we have a lot to look forward to, especially anyone who's joining on the Saturday shows knows what's going on with the research and the type of sessions that are going on. So if you don't know, please join us on the Saturday show. And that is around midnight Pacific Standard Time on the Parent Awakening and Live Paranormal. Vitrina, how are you?
Hey, Vitrina, how are you doing? Hey, Vitrina, did you get my message? Anyway, I sent you a couple of messages. I don't know if you received them, but so Vitrina's a regular on both shows. So she has some recordings, so I'm trying to help her get those backed up. And anyway, I'm going to get those recordings I'm going to just clean them up, send them over to her, and see. I'm interested in seeing what she has. Sounds interesting, though. Don't want to get into it too much because it's a little personal. But
the general concept of review, whatever evidence you collect, review, and that's exactly what you're working with Vitrina with, is to review your evidence properly. And there's probably a lot of captures in that, from what I understand, from what I've heard through the grapevine.
Yeah.
Hey, Kate, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Kate.
We're having our audience is still kind of slowly coming in, but we are the main topic for this evening, and we'll jump into it in a little bit. We'll kind of finish our small talk, but we're going to be discussing direct radio voice, ITC, direct radio voice. And we do have some notes on that, some things we'd like to have you interact with in the show, but we're still finishing the small talk. I'm kind of trying to put Rob on the spot for stopping building boxes, but I don't know how much more I could do putting him on the spot. He's not responding to it. You know, I'm trying to Trying
No,
to
I mean, it's just with what I'm working on now, and it falls a lot in line with what we're talking about with direct radio voice,
right.
but it's direct radio voice, but on a totally different level.
Right. It's almost like the same end result of direct radio voice, and the gentleman we'll be speaking about tonight, Marcello Bacci. It's on that same level where you're getting sentences in full communication, but it's going about it a whole different way.
Yeah.
And I look forward to watching that progress. And it's interesting because you are in some way using your box that you built for this research, so that it almost seems like there was a rhyme and reason for you to build these boxes, and now it's leading you to the next area of research. So it's very interesting to witness. It's very cool.
Yeah. And it's kind of freaky I mean, Josh and I had some conversations and how can I say this?
Conversation.
Well, I mean, the conversations that we were discussing, there was some direct parallels with somebody else, messages that were coming through to somebody else. And it's almost about along the same lines with what's happening. So it's kind of crazy. And I could go into it a little bit, but I don't want to sound crazy either. So,
I think that ship has sailed, Rob.
probably. Yeah. I think that's set sail a long time ago too.
Yeah. No, we're well off the deep end here. We're talking about broken radios and white noise. So it's our listeners too are in the same boat with us. So we're all a little bit wacky, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, Vitrina knows.
Yeah, but the funny thing is this has nothing to do with radio signal. That's the whole thing. It's
true.
Totally something different.
Well, and there are some parallels in what we're speaking about tonight with Marcello Bacci, and we're going to get into that and how the radio was essentially used and what they learned going through the years with direct radio voice. So that there's a lot of parallels and things that'll tie into that research as well.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Yes, in fact, Kate says, awesome. I'm trying to learn more about the technology. I started more in the spiritual medium world, and lately I've been very interested in the science investigation side of the paranormal. This is the perfect show for that because we are trying to blend the spiritual side with the science and technology side. And Rob and I are both spiritual, but we both have technical backgrounds. So that's the basis of the show is we are combining science. They need each other. Science needs a spiritual side and vice versa. And Rob and I happen to believe, and many others do, that is a combination for ITC, for successful ITC. Again, just a theory. But thank you for joining us, Kate.
And here's kind of the funny thing. This conversation that we're having right now has a lot to do with, I guess, with mediumship. It's on that same, if you're into any type of mediumship, you know that there's different levels of mediumship. And this is tied into higher learning. So, and I just talked to somebody else that is, he will be doing a show on a network soon. And he heard about what has been going on, and he's blown away with what I've discovered, because they've been talking about it, but nobody's been able to accomplish that. So so it's on a totally different level. And they talk about it during mediumship, things like that, and the way that they communicate. But I'm doing it in a different form, and where others can hear that communication and experience that communication audibly, and they're like blown away on how in the hell did I discover that.
I'm wondering the same thing.
So
I'm just playing with you. I'm teasing you.
So,
that's my job, is to tease you.
That's just a little gist of what's happening. So it's kind of cool. It is.
It's
kind of freaky, but it's really cool.
No,
And
I tease, but you know I'm absolutely impressed. But I tease. I have to tease.
yeah.
So you get teased no matter what. You're the captain of the ship. I have to tease. You know, I gotta keep you in check, right?
Yeah. No, exactly. So I mean, I just can't go into it because it's an ongoing project and
Right,
there's others involved in the project. So
right, right,
I
right.
just can't say too much.
Right.
Uh,
Well, everyone has that understanding, so you don't want to betray anyone's trust. I mean, it's a tough situation to navigate, but you know, you do the research and you move forward, and things will become more evident over time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just what why I wanted to share why I decided to make the switch. Um
From ghost boxes to this new research.
yeah, and the funny thing is it's almost like, and I'm not being derogatory, I'm not being, whatever. It's almost like moving on from working with walkie-talkies to um a whole different level of communication.
Well, and again, so much relates to who we're going to be speaking about tonight with Marcello Bacci. And I know I'm trying to tie this in. You know, that's what I do.
No, I mean,
But in terms of
I'm trying to kind of like dumb it down. I mean, try
right,
not to get too technical. But
right.
it's almost, that's the only way that I could kind of explain it.
No, I think that makes sense. And again, you know, we're working with that on the Saturday show, or you are. I am now the moderator of the Saturday show, so I will be in the background helping Rob out. But that is something that if you tune into the Saturday show and listen to the progression of the experimentation and see what's going on. It's very interesting. Uh, this may be a good time to
Let's get into it.
dive in. And when we talked about this, a friend of the show, Ben Jenkins, and I had a conversation, and we were messaging each other about direct radio voice. And Marcello Bacci, we've talked about it before, and it kind of came up in our conversation when we were talking about direct radio voice. And as I went back to review my notes and I watched some documentaries that are available, what first captured my attention so much was that this was accomplished decades ago in the 70s and the 80s and 90s. And these, again, were full sentences, paragraphs, clear communication coming through in the presence of 30, 40, 50 other people. I mean, there were plenty of witnesses to this, technicians here on Earth, not spirit technicians, but technicians that knew about the radio that Marcello Bacci was using. And Marcello Bacci is the subject of tonight's discussion because he brought direct radio voice to the forefront. He didn't create direct radio voice in the sense that he didn't invent this. He was a big fan or student, if you will, of Frederick Jurgensen. And Frederick Jurgensen was the first, if you will, pioneer to really put diligence to ITC and work with EVP and recording voices. Dr. Konstantin Radova worked with interfrequency recording. And what that means is tuning a radio station in between frequencies or signals. So as you turn from one frequency as it comes in and you hear a radio station, as you turn it slowly, manually, the static in between the two radio stations is what you would call an interfrequency. And Dr. Konstantin Radova and Frederick Jurgensen experimented with this. Well, Marcello Bacci learned about this and he became very fascinated with it. Now, his earliest work was involved with EVP recording on analog reel-to-reel tape. He has a lot of experience with EVP and recording in traditional formats. But it wasn't until direct radio voice he started working with this concept where he really started producing some absolutely amazing results. And again, it's just by using a sensitive touch and manually tuning the radio to an interfrequency or static frequency in between the radio signals. Now, here's what's interesting, and I want to point this out. I'm going to give you a statistic. It's going to blow your mind. But Marcello Bacci's evidence was put to the test, particularly by FBI voice analysis software. He had a 97% success rate. What do I mean by that? The voices of the living that were recorded before they died had a 97% success rate or match of the voices he received through the radio. Whoever was they or spirit, whoever was creating these voices, there was a 97% match to the voice, to those same voices of those people when they were living and their voices were recorded. 97% accuracy. That's impressive. That's voice analysis software from the 1970s, so a lot has improved since then, but that's incredible if you think about that. And again, these were full sentences. These were paragraphs. There are two quotes that really caught my attention from Marcello Bacci. So I was watching this documentary, which I'd like to recommend to check out or look at the Paranormal Research Association on YouTube. I believe it's Jeremy's site. He's got a collection of some videos on there that are fantastic. It's a really quick, easy way to get familiar with some of the ITC pioneers. Anyway, Marcello Bacci said two things that really caught my attention. One, this was a quote. It's a present they gave to us to know who we are. So Marcello's opinion about the communication coming through the radio was that it was a gift. It was to help us know more about ourselves. Another quote he stated, the radio acts as a telecommunication medium and they know it. Who they are, what they want, and their origin is a phenomenon. So this gives you an idea of Marcello's theories behind what he was doing. Now, in talking about the technology that he was using, there wasn't anything very special. He used valved and devalved radios. Now, what does that mean? It means tube radio. A valve is a tube. Now, I don't know how far I want to get off on topic with this with technology, but let me just say this. The vacuum tubes were special for direct radio voice because the tubes amplified the electric signals as a voltage amplifier to get the audio to the power amplifier stage. It was a very smooth and easy way to increase voltage or the electric current flow. Now, here's what's interesting. These tubes amplify voltage. His tech took the tubes out of the radio one by one, and the voices still came through. The radio was being used as a carrier, regardless of the fact if the tubes were in the radio or not. There was nothing amplifying the voltage through the power staging, and voices still came through. It blew his tech away. He didn't even understand how it was possible. So when you think about that, the radio was being used as a carrier, and it didn't necessarily have to have the voltage at the amplifier power stage before it hit the speaker. He was still getting voices. So remember that. Keep that in the back of your mind. So over time and over Marcello Bacci's career, he passed away in 2019. The voices became more fluid and more coherent over time. Obviously, the more time and energy he spent on this, the voices were more coherent. They were more legible. Two or three more quotes I want to share with you. We can kind of open up the discussion about direct radio voice. Marcello Bacci asked, what is the catalyst? Essentially, how does this work? What's going on? His response from them or spirit, whoever, stated, we interact with a lot of interest. The human brain modifies the same ambient where we will return. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about that, that's a clue to spiritual mediumship. In a way, this is insinuating that a part of this equation has to do with the body or the soul or the brain. That spiritual mediumship, while a lot of people say, well, I don't believe in it, or it may not be possible, maybe there is something to that scientifically. There's a frequency that's being resonated, or there's an ability for people with spiritual mediumship abilities to use their brain, their energy, to conduct this communication. I mean, this was, you can go hear this in this video. I mean, this is something he actually recorded live. You can hear this through a recorded video. Another quote that they, or spirit, said, energy storage exists simultaneously throughout all the dimensions, as if the earth was transparent. This allows direct communication. So again, we've talked about scientifically in some way or another, the EM spectrum resonating or existing in all dimensions. And maybe the radio waves of the EM spectrum are good carrier signals for their communication to come through. Just one theory. here's another quote. They said, "The magnetic field which revealed the true experiences requires new equipment." So there was an acknowledgement to the fact that Marcello Bacci was using equipment that they were working with, and they were acknowledging or aware of a particular type of equipment. Another question he asked, "What frequency do you use?" The answer was, "The possibility that the carrier signal is in the range. The radio signal is picked up in this way." Again, talking about the radio being used as a carrier, even with, in his case, the tubes being removed. Probably the last quote and the most interesting that I've been most intrigued with as of recent. They responded to him when he asked again, what was the catalyst or how does this work? They, or spirit, said, "It is the third space that allows us a personal possibility, the mesosphere." That's the layer of the atmosphere between the ionosphere and the exosphere. We've talked about this before because the ionosphere works with the AM at night. Signals can travel further because, again, there's an issue with the free electrons, and at night it creates kind of a wall or a ceiling, if you will, for the frequencies to bounce constantly between the Earth and the ionosphere to travel farther around the planet. What they basically alluded to Marcello Bacci was the free electrons in the mesosphere helps with the communication in somehow, some way. And I thought that was very interesting because, again, we have issues with the ionosphere with scanning AM band at night. So here we're talking about the mesosphere and, again, free electrons. And keep that in mind with free electrons. Now, I don't have tube radios with me, but I have an example of two radios that I've used for direct radio voice. I've had okay success. This is a transistor radio from the 60s. It's medium wave or AM. It's not short wave like Marcello Bacci used primarily. But by fine tuning with my thumb, I can actually pick up an interfrequency signal and attempt direct radio voice. Again, moderate success, nothing to write home about. And I have another little, these are $19 radios. You don't need a lot to invest if you want to experiment with direct radio voice. This is a little Eddie Bauer radio. And this, again, has manual tuning. I don't know if you can see it. And I can easily pick an interfrequency on this radio and attempt direct radio voice. Again, moderate success. But at the same time, there are many people who are having great success. One of them, our mutual friend, Ron Iacovetti, he's working with long wave, but he's had some amazing success with direct radio voice. He's teaching graduate level courses on this. This is kind of your DRV 101. He's on the 500 levels. He's much more experienced in it. But again, Rob, to tie this into what you were talking about earlier, this has a lot to do with the research you're currently conducting. And essentially the radio being a carrier, but not necessarily having the voltage amplification needed or necessary for this type of communication. Would you agree?
No, I absolutely agree.
I mean, I'm trying to think of someone. I feel like this is most closely related to Marcello Bacci's work in that sense.
Right. And no, it's funny because some of the things that you pointed out, is just, you hit the nail on the head. A lot of the things that I'm experiencing. So it's just crazy.
Yeah. And what's interesting is even with I think it was like the 1960s, the transistor became more popular than tube in terms of power staging. And, transistor radios became more popular. They required lower voltage and they didn't have, the risks of breaking tubes in these radios and having to clean them and having to constantly service them. But Marcello Bacci still stayed with the same radio that he would, again, use valved and devalved, again, with the tubes in and the tubes taken out. And he was still getting communication and voices through it. That's incredible considering I've tried direct radio voice with my inexpensive radios and I have hardly any success. And then you look at someone like him who's had tremendous success, even with the tubes taken out. And then you really look at Marcello Bacci. What is it about him that enables him to get this communication in the same way, where other people were trying it and not having the same success? Not saying they didn't have any success at all, but the same time, just remarkable success.
No, and the funny thing is, like, just like, I don't know if you saw me taking off my headphones.
Was I talking too long? Is that why?
No. And listening, yeah, there was some stuff coming through. So, and I know yesterday. So yeah, I don't get very emotional through a lot of things. But yesterday, Josh and I were on the phone talking um, about a lot of things with what I'm working on. And here's the funny thing: I didn't know Frank personally. I knew him. I mean, I just knew a lot about him, be from other people that were very close to him and Norma. And they would go to their house for dinner all the time, and it had nothing to do with ITC. They were just close friends.
I was just going to add really quick, for those that don't know, Frank Sumption is the father of the ghost box,
Right.
the scanning ghost box. Go ahead. I'm sorry, just in case someone didn't know.
So with this whole thing, with a lot of the things that, you know, if people know Frank, and they would talk about a lot of the messages that he would get, because he wouldn't share that a lot with a lot of people. He would share it with close people that he knew, because he didn't want people thinking like he was crazy. So it's kind of funny on how a lot of the messages I was getting, for some weird reason, a lot of things were coming to me, and Frank was coming to mind. And I don't even think of Frank. I've never owned a Frank's box. Like I said, I know about Frank, but for some reason there was a lot of messages coming through and his name was coming up. And I'm like, why in the hell isn't his name coming up? So I think with a lot of his research, he was getting messages that were coming to him, and that's what was driving his research. And it's kind of funny how I'm getting a lot of messages, and that's pushing me towards the research I'm doing. And I'm getting so many voices coming through without even using a radio, which is crazy. So with a lot of the things that Josh is talking about, I see, I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening, and it's like the same thing what we're discussing tonight. And I just don't want to go into in too much detail, but just giving, you know, just giving some context.
Yes, and I looking at the ITC community, I know that the radio and the ghost box is obviously a very popular and successful tool. I mean, there's no denying it. I mean, and we've learned the many different ways it can be used. What's again, and go back to Marcello Bacci, what I find so interesting is that the setup was so simple. Mm-hmm. There weren't bells and whistles. There wasn't even power staging at one point in the radio. I mean, his own technician here on Earth looked at the radio and said, "This makes no technical sense. Period." I mean, it should not be possible.
Well, that's
it still happened. This communication still came in, and he documented tapes and tapes and tapes of it. I mean, thousands of witnesses, 50 in a room at a time, watching this happen, hearing their deceased loved ones' voices in full sentences. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I mean, that's absolutely right. There's no rhyme or reason why it should be happening, but it's happening. Can I explain it? No. But anyway, go ahead.
No, and you know what, in talking to, I know Ron's research with direct radio voice, and he's put a lot of time and energy into this, and he's taken this many steps further, and he should be talking about this tonight. Again, I'm kind of just covering the basics with this. He's really more the expert in this field. He's working with long range, long wave frequency, 222 kilohertz. I mean, really esoteric frequencies, scanning and having success. What I guess is so interesting is it brings up what Raina just brought up, is ITC is there's a combination of our brain, our soul, our body, our intent, our manifestation, our will, combined with the technology. They need each other. And I'm learning that more and more. And even in small examples, when I'm not having a very good day, or my energy's low, or my intentions, my brain is foggy, I don't get a lot of communication, if anything at all. I mean, there's been times when nothing happens. But now that I look back in hindsight, I go, I wasn't in the right frame of mind, or my energy was weak, or whatever combination affected that. And it really reminds me that as Rob, as much as we're pushing with technology and trying to improve the clarity of things and the proliferation of this communication, a lot of times I'll admit this, I forget about my own mental, physical, spiritual health, my energy, and what that's contributing and what that's able to do. Because again, you look at Marcello Bacci with the most basic setup in history, with tubes taken out of his radio, and he's getting full, clear, coherent sentences, paragraphs. I mean, it's incredible. And then so I look to him and say, what was he doing? And he didn't even act like he was anything special. There was no ego about this for him. This wasn't anything that he was trying to do to conquer the ITC community, if you will. This was just something he was interested in and had success with. And he was a very humble person. So you really have to look at the person behind the ITC, the experimentation. The human soul and the energy and the aura have so much more to do, I believe, with this communication. Again, just the theory, but just by looking at these examples throughout history. And communication can help. It can make it clear. It can do a lot of things, but so much depends on the person. That's what it seems to me. That's my opinion.
No, and you're absolutely correct. And it's funny, if you look back at, people that are doing a lot of ITC research now, they're taking steps back. I mean, I was just talking to a few people, and I'm not going to mention any names, but they're even saying the same thing that I was saying. I mean, we just had a conversation and just saying, the ITC field in the UK, and in Europe in general is so far advanced and so far ahead in the research. And it's funny, but they're taking steps like backwards, and they're using older technology to do a lot of the research.
Right.
And just seeing a lot of their the results, it's mind blowing on what they're doing. And it's like, wait a minute, you're using a tube radio. And they were like, no, they said, you know what? I'm having some great results. And I said, no, I'm seeing that. So, and there's other people here also that have said the same thing. They're like, yeah, dude, they're like so far ahead of, what we've been doing. So, yeah, it's just crazy. But, but with everything that you're saying, I mean, radio it's not even needed, really. That's what I mean, when it all comes down to it. And with what I'm working on, radio isn't even needed. It's just acting as a carrier. Has nothing to do with, what the radio is picking up. It's just acting as a carrier.
Yes. And then for someone like me who, I am spiritual, but I do obviously approach this I try to, at least from whatever technical knowledge I have to the best of my ability. And it just further complicates the question, because so often I'm so focusing on the technical solution to make this better. And then something like this happens, which completely negates any science, or any understanding we have of our dimension and how the pressure wave works, how sound works. It's a mechanical wave. And all of a sudden, these scientific principles are no longer necessary. Doesn't apply,
Right.
Especially when tubes are taken out of the radio. You're going, okay, well, now we don't have any power staging. The voltage can't be amplified. How are these voices still coming in at the same amplitude? It doesn't make sense. It defies our physics. And then it's amazing that is a constant reminder, and that this has come about. But at the same time, my spiritual side, it's like, okay, now we have a better understanding. And then my technical side is like, really how much of our understanding of our dimension really applies here. Doesn't seem like it matters. spirit, whoever we're talking to. Again, I don't want to push any buttons, be very neutral about this. Whoever it is, they'll use whatever they want, whenever they want. That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm speaking very generally, but the longer I do this, I'm going, man, it really doesn't matter what we use. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I know our mutual friend Ron talks about free will, and that there is an element of free will. And if it's possible to communicate, they will.
Well, that's what I was saying. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, so when we're doing the Saturday show, a lot of people say, Rob, there's communication coming through and you're not talking, but it's in your voice. And I've listened back and I was like, holy crap, I didn't say that. And it happens quite often. And just like what Barbara and Raina are saying, ego is a huge part of the communication killer. It's because when you're communicating with spirit, you have to have a clear mind. You have to have the right intentions. So, I mean, everything has to align. And then once everything aligns, communication just free flows. And I don't know if that's part of why, and like what you said, I mean, a lot of it has to do with operator. Because a lot of it, I think, is, I think psychokinesis has a lot to do with it. I think probably about 90% of it, if not more. It doesn't matter what the device is. You can just have a live mic, a hot mic, just open, and you're going to get that communication no matter what.
Wireless mics too. I've set up a lot of wireless mics, and I've been quite shocked at the communication I wasn't intending to get. Just through wireless systems.
No, exactly. So, I mean, it's just crazy. And like I said, I mean, I can't explain with the messages that I'm getting, and the things that I'm being told to do. And then when I try it, I'm woken up at 4:00 in the morning, and then first thing in the morning, I get up before I go to work, and I try some things out, and then I send you recordings, dude. Look at what I just got, and I send it over to you.
after I've had coffee, of course.
So it's just it's crazy. But anyway,
Raina and Barbara hitting on excellent points about the ego. I mean, that absolutely. I mean, doesn't that kill everything in life? It seems like the ego always gets in the way. No matter what you're doing in life. Just as general advice, it's as I say, keep your ego in your pocket, or there's some phrases like that. But yeah, Kevin brings up something that's interesting too. That came up in this documentary about Marcello Bacci and direct radio voice. Kevin's mentioning where's his biophotons, that our body communicates via biophotons, and the discussion about electrons always comes up, and our bodies being essentially or matching resonant frequency with our radio communication device. Now, spiritual mediums experience this without the aid of any tools. And I've only been able to experience this with the aid of an electronic tool. So I guess I'm not a spiritual medium. I mean, I know I'm not, but my point is, what I've learned is there's a bonding time with the radio or the device that you're using. And as that time goes on, it seems like, again, I'm speaking very theoretical here, but it seems like my body or my soul or my energy kind of bonds with the radio, and there's this connection made, such as a resonant frequency, and it all plays as part of a puzzle. Again, when you're talking about using electronic devices or ITC, again, I know spiritual mediums or people with mediumship abilities who are psychic obviously don't need the aid of an electronic device. But the frequency, again, it comes back to frequency, Rob. It really does. It comes back to frequency.
That's all it is. And you've seen it happen. I mean, you've witnessed it. So,
right.
Was I using anything to do with radio? No, it was just frequency. No. And what happened? I mean, it was nothing but voices coming through. And everybody's like, what the hell did you just do? I mean, it's happened. I mean, I've done it live. So yeah, it's crazy.
Right. In fact, the last Saturday show, that was the second or third session in, right?
Yeah.
we experimented with that. That's what I'm saying. I know it's late for a lot of people. In fact, it's at least 3 a.m. East Coast time. But if you have a chance to check out those Saturday shows, we're definitely experimenting. Or Rob's running his experiments, and I'm helping in the background now. But you should really check out what's going on there, because there's not only is it a tight knit group, but there's an energy with this group now that's formed. There's a trust. And the communication, again, I've been doing this for 12 years. I don't miss it, whether I'm at work or not. It's one of those things where I want to witness it, because it's incredible. And I always talk about Ron Ricketts, who designed the mini box. And that was one of his, in his paperwork that came with the box, he talked about try and use this box in a group setting. And you'll be surprised at the energy that can be stimulated for communication. And Rob, I'm convinced that's helped in your research a lot, in terms of that energy almost carrying with you through the week and helping you, channel those ideas to progress in the research. I feel like those Saturday shows have helped a lot.
Yeah, dude, it's weird. Like tonight, I'm still, I think there's just so much that has happened within the last 24 hours that, even tonight, I'm still kind of a little emotional. I don't know. It's just really hard. Doing the show tonight is really hard. I'm gonna be honest.
I noticed that, and I know that from talking with you through the week. That's why I was trying to play with you a little bit and tease trying to lighten up the mood. But and I guess at some point it's just we try and put on the face in the show for the show and be as excited as we possibly can. But it's been an emotional week, and surprisingly, as this research has progressed, it's become more emotional. I'm even feeling the progression and watching you go through this. It's been very interesting. And, again, as long as I've been doing this, I haven't witnessed someone go through this firsthand. So it's something that's new for me, but definitely, I understand your decision to move on from ghost boxes, and maybe it's something you'll return to, but absolutely. And I think our friends on the Saturday show, our family, if you will, they're supporting you because they see that something's progressing here, something's going on. So I understand that you're drained. And so that's why I was trying to, again, poke fun at you. And I'm going to continue to for the rest of the show, because that's just what I have to do.
So here's a big thing, and I don't talk about this much at all. I could have a huge ego if I was that type of person.
Oh, I'm not going to let you, man. That ain't gonna happen.
I mean, no, but what I'm saying is, like, one I custom made a box for somebody, not knowing this until after the fact. But the box that I designed and sold was going to be used on a big production in the Netherlands.
Ooh. That's me. I'm trying to bring you back down the road.
So the whole thing was, and that got me so much exposure, that, I still get messaged all the time. I mean, I get requests weekly. I mean, probably, I shouldn't say weekly. I should say daily. I get about 4 or 5 requests every day on, hey, can you build me this box? Can you build me a box? They want the same box that I built. And I said, unfortunately, I'm not building that box anymore. That was a one-time deal. And I'm not building it anymore. But then they were like, well, can you build me one similar, but not like it? I said, unfortunately, no. I'm just not building boxes right now.
Can you build anything at all?
So the whole thing is, I mean, I just said, you know what? Thank you. It's a compliment. And then I just let it go. But with that said, I mean, that's why I think majority of my boxes were sold in the UK. I just think that there's a lot of things that have happened over the last 10 years with the ITC field here in the US. I mean, on a couple of occasions where there was a lot of fallout. There's a lot of ego that is taking place. And it's sad. There's a lot of fallout. It's like a lot of competition, a lot of jealousy, a lot of whatever. I don't know what to say, but there's just a lot that's going on. and it's just killed. I just think that that people aren't putting in the time and the research into ITC. They're just more bickering about, oh, this person's building that, this person's building that, and then it turns into a lot of arguments and a lot of splitting up of groups. And the funny thing is, the one person that everybody makes fun of and makes the most, I guess he's the most hated, and it could be because of jealousy, is this person has probably influenced the ITC or introduced people into the ITC field. Probably, he's probably the one that everybody should be thanking for making the ITC popular in the US.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
And it's just kind of funny how the most hated guy in the field is probably the one that made it the most popular in the US. And that's why people always would rather take one of his devices over any other ghost box, period.
I don't know how to respond to that.
I mean, it's true. If you ever ask somebody, and I get this request all the time, can you build me a portal? That's all I got to say. That's it. Not dropping names. I'm just naming the device.
There is a large request for you to build certain device audio signal flows. You do get asked to design a lot of audio signal flows that are very common.
Right.
Whether we agree to like them or not, people seem to like them. I mean, people seem to like that setup. I mean, it's very popular. There's no denying that. It just makes me think that everyone's at different places in their research. And
I can tell you this right now. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, go ahead.
But a couple of days ago, there was a device posted up that this person is building and is going to be putting it up for sale.
Okay.
He had over 1,000 people asking how much and if they can buy it.
1,000 people. Wow.
Yeah. No lie. In that, all those, and then so I started reading comments, and signal flow was like the biggest comment, and how many people say it enhances communication. And that was a lot of the comments. In that 1,000 comments, there was, I would say, about 90% of those comments were because the signal flow works better in these devices. I mean, I'm just saying.
I know. I mean, I have my own personal opinions, but who am I to say, again, what people should use or not use? That's why I'm not commenting. I mean,
no. I mean, I'm just saying that's where the field is. That's where the ITC field is here in the US.
Well, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you, but I always try and tie it into our main topic, but I did want to bring up a point about that. But
no, go ahead. No, I mean, I'm done.
I was just going to say is
okay. So signal flow. So Vitrina wants to know what's signal flow exactly.
So
signal flow is the audio signal going from an amplifier through different components that is going to change that signal. And then when it comes out, it's not the same as when it first started. So say you take our voices, now we take them through, let's just say, an EQ of some sort. Then we change the process of how let's just say we add effects to our voice. So our voice goes from sounding like this to sounding totally like a robot. Let's just put it that way.
Well, and there's many different effects that are in an ITC audio signal flow, but it's what happens to the audio from the source to your ears.
Right.
Basically, when it comes out of the ghost box and then goes through an audio signal flow, it's what happens to that signal by the time it hits your ears. And like Rob said, in this case, it's the effects. It's the reverb pedal, the noise reduction pedal,
like a cutter pedal.
Right. And that's when we talk about Marcello Bacci's setup, we look at, I'm trying to look at this objectively and really just see, when I look at his evidence and what he got from the very basic setup he had of a valved radio, tube and non-tube radio. And then a large majority of the ITC community here in the United States looks at these audio signal flows with reverb and noise suppression, and they're saying, well, it improves communication. Nothing I've ever heard. Nothing I've ever heard. Can you guys hear me okay? From a portal or a geobox has ever rivaled anything Marcello Bacci has done, period. Changed my mind. And my ears are trained as an audio engineer to listen for clear, precise communication from a pure signal. I've never heard anything from these devices that rivals the clarity, the consistency, the legibility from anything from direct radio voice, or specifically in this case, what Marcello Bacci has done. So I almost see that as a step backward in many ways. You know, again, I don't want to say what people should use, because ITC in many ways is personal and it depends on the operator. And maybe people have great success with those devices. But objectively, you know, I'm not being paid to do any of this, but if I was being paid to go through research and say, pick the most legible, outstanding, amazing evidence, I mean, 10 out of 10 times it's Marcello Bacci compared to anything from a ghost box into an audio signal flow of a reverb pedal, noise reduction pedal, and a guitar amp. But again, there has to be something to it, Rob, because so many people say it works for them. So maybe I'm missing something, right? I mean, so many people swear by these things. I could be wrong. Who knows?
I mean, let's just put it this way. Everybody would like, Rob, you got to get rid of your reverb in your boxes. But do you know how many requests I get for my box to have reverb? 10 out of 10 times.
Right. Look at the Andy's boxes, Chicago Spirit Wave. Very successful boxes. Andy did a great job with his entire lineup. I always preferred the Model A because they were dry, non-affected, no reverb, no delay. But look how many people love the Model E, and I do love the Model E. It's amazing. But,
I had the Model E.
Right, and they're fantastic. They communicate so well, but everyone swears by the delay and reverb. So again, maybe we're wrong, or maybe because I'm trained to want, as an audio engineer, a pure signal that's unaffected. You know, right at the source. That's what I want. Maybe that's not what works best. But I look at Marcello Bacci and I see his evidence, completely dry signal, unaffected, right out of a radio. Like he drank his coffee black and he liked his direct radio voice just right out of the radio. No effects, nothing. And he went decades capturing amazing evidence. So again, maybe the device doesn't matter. Maybe it is truly all about the person.
Yep, exactly.
And Kevin says the user's intention could be everything. Exactly, Kevin. Exactly. And that's
exactly what I said earlier. I said, you know, when I start my shows, and before I do a mantra, before I do any type of meditation, anything like that, I have to do that before the show. But when I do those things that I just mentioned, everything has positive intent. And that's just how I prepare myself, how I prepare my mind, how I prepare everything. And then once that happens, subconsciously, now I'm channeling. Once I start the box sessions, I'm subconsciously channeling, which I didn't even know at one point. And somebody pointed it out to me, dude, you're channeling big time. And that's why you have such great success doing a live stream. So now doing all the channeling has now opened up something even bigger that I can't even comprehend on what's going on. But the outcome is just phenomenal and something that's just mind blowing. It's on a totally different level.
Well, let's compare you and I for a second. Objectively, no ego involved. Let's just cut right down to it, right?
Right.
When you first got into ITC, you saw me bring some ghost boxes around, and you've said many times on the show you didn't understand it. It was just kind of like, what is this guy doing with broken radios?
Yeah.
So I've been in ITC twice as long as you. I've been scanning radios.
You've been probably in it like 3 times longer than I have.
Okay, and now you've been in the paranormal community even longer than I have, but it just specifically ITC research.
Yeah, but you know what though?
Right? So
and this is the funny thing is there's a place and time for ITC research. Now, when you're doing ITC research, honestly, and this is still my opinion till today, never use a ghost box on an investigation. And there's reasons behind that.
The chaos.
There's already chaos there. You don't want to bring in any more chaos into the investigation.
Right.
And yeah, so anyway, go
now,
for it.
Now with that, seriously, that was good addition, because with that being said, and with your experience doing paranormal investigations, you've been in the paranormal longer. I've been in ITC longer, but you came into ITC. I've had some of the best boxes ever made, some of the most exclusive boxes ever made. And I get amazing evidence. There's no question. But I've never, ever gotten anything like what you're getting in terms of the progress of the Saturday show. So, on paper, you would look and say, well, Josh should be getting this evidence, or Josh should be making this progress. Why is he not? He's got the best equipment. He's got audio engineering skills in the background. Yet here you come along a fraction of the time in ITC, and your results are eons beyond mine. And again, what I'm trying to say by that is it comes down to the operator. Look how much comes down to the operator.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah, and again, you got to hear the interview with Marcello Bacci's radio technician. He's literally, and I can confirm this about the tube radio and his setup. There's no way the voices should have been come. The voices could have come through, but they shouldn't have been audible. There was no voltage amplification. There was just no way those voices should have come through, and they're coming through. Especially with the radio off or unplugged, he was getting this evidence.
Well, that's the thing, is when I first started getting heavily into ITC, I was getting radio voices coming through my radios, and the amps were powered off. How in the hell is that even possible?
I don't think that's ever happened to me. And you're right. How is that possible? I honestly can say I don't think that's ever happened. And I think if that would have happened, I would have remembered that, right? I mean, even though I document this and I've done so much work.
And I had 4 people, because we all literally just walked into the house and dropped all of our bags in the kitchen floor, and I put my box down on the table in the kitchen, and we all walked out into the living room. And then we started hearing voices coming from the kitchen, and myself and one of the other investigators walked in there, and we heard it was coming directly from my box. And she said, dude, it's coming from your box. Right. So I opened it up and I said, that's impossible. It's off. And she said, well, maybe the battery's on. And I said, look, there's no battery. It's off. And she said, open it up. So we opened it up. Everything's powered off. And I said, look, when I turn it on, you'll see the amp light turn on. So we turned it on, and then boom, the amp light came off. So I shut it back off. I closed it up and said, see, it's off. We walked out of the kitchen, and then the voices started coming through again. And she said, what the hell is going on? And I said, I don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, it does happen. And Josh, how many texts have you ever heard come through for you?
Texts for me?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot. I mean,
no, I mean, like at one session, when you're doing a session.
Oh, I was going to say, have I heard all the different names of the texts over the years? And I was going to say, I have a long list of those that I believe are texts on the other side, but how many in one session? I've had, when I've worked with my cousin, and you know the situation, her fiance passed, and we work with the mini box and your radio, I've 2, maybe, and most commonly Lisa and Eva. I do get Tom, but Lisa and Eva seem to be the 2 that come in most frequently for me. Sometimes Paul comes through.
And how many texts have you heard come through on one of my sessions on a Saturday?
Oh, I've heard 6 in one session.
In one session. So
in one 10 to 15 minute session, I believe, again, in my research, I could be wrong. I never want to assume I'm, concrete with, this is the way it is. But I believe I documented 6 in one of your sessions.
yeah, and I mean, I've documented 6. And I think that's the most, but I mean, I'm like, how is that even possible? But I'm always have at least 4, at least during every session, there's at least 4 texts. And I'm
Now,
like, how?
I don't know. I think you and I have some mutual friends where that's happened. There's been an occasion where that's happened, and there are a few off the top of my head I can think but it's not as frequent or common, if you will. It seems to happen every Saturday on your shows. The whole gamut. Yeah, it seems like everyone shows up. It's kind of like, and again, we talked about this. You're setting a time every single week to meet. It's consistent. And it's amazing. Like Marcello Bacci said, the universe or spirit, or they seem to have a cosmic memory. If they're in a place without time or the restrictions of space, there is some cosmic memory to meet every Saturday at this time, right? There is an understanding. So there's still an understanding that we're in a different dimension of time and space, however that works. And I believe that's part of the success as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Let's see. Kevin says, I never got an impression that I ever worked with a tech. It always seemed to be direct. Kevin, that's very possible. There are some people in the community that have done research that believe techs are mandatory, meaning they are always there, whether you know it or not, to facilitate and protect the communication. And there are others that believe they're not necessary, meaning they're not a requirement, meaning techs come and go, but it's not an essential component for ITC to proliferate or be facilitated. I don't know either way. I just know I document techs in my research. And again, on Rob's Saturday shows, they're, several times in one session, Eva will say her name or Lisa will say her name. Paul will say his name. Tom, how many times have we heard Tom? And he seems to be a very popular tech with most people.
Yeah. So, and getting on to text now with a new research that I'm doing, there's basically 6 people at any given time. Well, there's always a child. Then there's a male, a female, and then there's 3 others. The 3 others are there, but they're not making themselves known. And there's one person that's basically in charge. I know that sounds weird, but
the techs had to call for their manager. They're like, this guy's doing something down there. I got to get my manager. So like upper management shows up.
Yeah, but it's different. And everybody that experienced it were pretty blown away with what the hell are we listening to right now? What the hell's going on?
And that again reminds me of Marcello Bacci's research. Now, a lot of it was done on his own, and he had great success. But so much of it was he had a room full of 20, 30, 40, 50 people who all experienced loss in their life, who were all there with an open mind, saying, well, let's see what becomes of this. There was no ego there. It was just, let's see this miracle of communication. And in the same way, this live stream with the group, technology allows people from around the world to do what Marcello Bacci did in a small city, in a crowded room. You're essentially doing this, but you're using bandwidth. You're using networking and electricity to bring that energy together. But it's a lot in the same way. And Marcello Bacci attributed a lot of Marcello Bacci attributed a lot of his success because he had the energy of other people in the room. And that helped bring about and facilitate that communication. So there's a lot of parallels there.
Yeah. And like what Raina said, yeah, it's a hierarchy. And if you ever talk to people that do mediumship, they will talk about the hierarchy. during that mediumship, when they're in circle and communicating. There's a hierarchy that is involved. So now we're getting like totally into it's a totally different realm. I know, but I'm just kind of giving some um a little bit of context. And other
Right.
people that are into mediumship know about the hierarchy.
And you've discussed that with me, and I know that there's some very good friends in our circle, a lot of people that you've introduced me to over the years that have explained this to me. And again, I haven't found that, and I'm just being very honest, I haven't found that in my research. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, or it doesn't, the hierarchy isn't exposed or revealed to certain people.
Right.
But it's just, again, on paper, you would think that this would have happened with my research. I've been doing it longer. I've had the best radios, the best equipment, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to be the catalyst. It seems to be the person or the energy or the psychic abilities or mediumship of who's conducting the experiment. Now, with that being said, I do believe ITC is for everyone, and I believe everyone can get some type of results. They'll be unique to you. But I do believe this phenomena and this miracle of communication will reveal itself to everyone who tries. Maybe some people have to try a little harder. Listen, some people can shoot a free throw and hit 10 in a row. Other people have to work on it longer, but you'll eventually all make the free throw. It's the same thing as in life and skills in life. That it really seems to be the same way with ITC. The longer and more diligent you practice this and you research it, the more will be revealed to you. But it doesn't mean the same message or the same information will be revealed to you as someone else. And look at Rob and I. We talk all the time. We're friends. We talk shop. And yet I'm getting completely different communication than him. And come find out, it's what Rob is getting is something that's very unique and different. And it's certainly something I'm enjoying witnessing. And I know, again, there's been witnesses week after week on the Saturday show testifying to these results.
Yeah, no, exactly. So Raina, what you can do, you can go on to if you go to YouTube, and just look up Marcello, you'll see a lot of links. You'll see a lot of links that will point you to a lot of his research. You can do that with any of the ITC pioneers. And there's a lot of documentaries. And that's basically, even if you go to a website, they're going to point you to YouTube, because a lot of people do that for archives, because they don't have to pay for, somewhere to share that file and for storage. So YouTube is like the central hub that everybody goes to find that research.
You know what? A great little place for Cliff Notes, Jeremy's site, Paranormal Research Association. Paranormal Research Association is on YouTube. And I think Jeremy's got like 60 videos up. But literally, you can crash course on a lot of the ITC pioneers and the history of this, in a few days or a few nights. And one of the documentaries is very popular that is on that YouTube site is about Marcello Bacci, and it will literally, again, give you a 50-minute crash course on what he's achieved. And you have to hear some of this evidence for yourself. Yeah. It's and let me explain this. It's a million times easier today to fake evidence than it was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. You have no idea what it would take for Marcello Bacci to fake this evidence using reel-to-reel tape machines that would have to be located very close to him and running, that wouldn't have very long cord length. These machines would be making noise. It logistically would be almost next to impossible to fake this. And so when you consider that and look at his evidence, you go, oh my gosh, it's some of the most legit and convincing evidence I've personally seen. And again, direct radio voice, it doesn't involve scanning. Fine tuning the sensitivity, if you will, manually, but not directly scanning as you would a random voltage generator like the Ghost Box or manual scan.
Michelle, what link were you referring to? Which topic? So basically, and then to answer your question, mediumship is sometimes there's classes on mediumship. So people will be teaching a course on for like psychic mediums, but mediumship in general is it's basically like a workshop where people will come together and um talk about different communication, talk about, different things that psychics will try to teach others on how to open up their abilities more, to try to learn how to communicate with spirit more. There's different types of mediumship.
That's a whole show in itself. I mean, that we could literally derail everything going into the different types, and
There's so many different
right.
types. So it's just a broad range.
Kevin brings up a good comment, and Kevin, I believe I've talked with you about this outside of the show, but Kevin says, since I could remember, I naturally used what I learned was remote viewing must factor into the spirit box success. And again, remote viewing, I would imagine, and I don't know much about it, but I would imagine, again, you're using the energy and frequency somehow that's available to you and using that to, again, manipulate or to bypass space and time somehow and see into another location. Again, I don't know much about it, but I feel like all of these roads will eventually lead back to some of the very similar ways we're even conducting ITC. So much has to do with us.
So that was like one of my earliest abilities that I discovered also was remote viewing. So when I was a kid, I'm going to go back into when I was learning about that ability that I had, and it was happening a lot. So even at night, I was afraid to go to sleep at night. I would turn on the TV. I would stay up till 3:00 in the morning watching TV, and I'm talking about when I was 4, 5 years old. And my mom would say, "No, you have to turn off TV." No, I just want to stay up and watch TV. Because I was afraid to go to sleep at night. Just because I was astroplaning on a nightly basis, and it would scare the crap out of me. And I still remember it like it was yesterday. So when I would start going to sleep, and it would happen every single night, and this is why I was afraid to go to sleep. Every night I would go to sleep. I would be in a pitch black room, and there was like these big bright white it almost looked like tables, but they were in a cube shape. It was like they looked like big ice blocks that were glowing white, and there was always two, and I would just be standing there in a black room, pitch black. You couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. The only thing that you could see is these two big white blocks. All of a sudden, a man and a woman would come out of the darkness and stand behind those blocks. And then they would start talking to me. And then I would wake up in a panic. And then my mom would always run in the room. What's wrong? What's wrong? And then I would talk about these two people. And she was like, oh, you're just having a bad dream. But it was the same dream or the same experience every single night. And this happened for maybe a couple of years. So yeah, it was just really creepy. And I mean, I still remember it like now. I was just visualizing it. So it was just crazy.
Yeah. And it's weird because when I met you, we discussed your abilities as a paranormal investigator, very down to earth, skeptical, scientific approach. And it seemed like you always avoided the abilities you had. And I'll just call them psychic abilities, just to be very general. And you seem to always avoid them and or deter from the fact that you were able to pick up on things or sense things. And you were always, in my opinion, in a place where if you couldn't prove that or back that up with a piece of equipment or something we were researching with, then you threw it out.
Exactly.
And it's interesting now, since I've known you or worked with you, how that's progressed, and slowly I've watched you almost like a gradual, like a graph. You've slowly transitioned, and you've left every year, you've kind of moved further away from technology. And it seems like you're coming to the realization that you're doing this. It's you, it's inside of you. It's all you, no matter what radio you use or what's going on. And again, I'm going to be the guy that ties it back into direct radio voice, but that was, I believe, a lot of Marcello Bacci's success. Something about him.
Yeah.
I can't even begin to tell you how not impressive his radio was, and how unbelievable it was to take the tubes out. And he's getting communication. Other people were having that success. They were having success recording and researching ITC. It wasn't like he was the only one. But to have that type of success, you have to look at the person. There's nothing, I can tell you as an audio engineer, there's nothing special about his radio. There were no tricks. I mean, there just weren't.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. So yes, I put my abilities behind me, because a lot of it would freak me out, because, I would dream about something. Like, I'll tell you guys a funny story. I had a dream about this lady I worked with, and we were good friends.
Hi, Summer.
It wasn't about her. It was about her house. So I was walking up, and there was people in her house. The door was wide open. So I walked in, and I walked around, looked around the house, whatever. And she, over the last few weeks, or the weeks prior to that, she was saying, Rob, I have, something in my house. I want you to come over someday and blah, blah, blah. Just check it out for me. I was like, all right, whatever. So the next day I went, after the dream, I walked straight into her office when I got to work, walked in, and I said, hey, Carol, I have something to talk to you about. She goes, what's that? And I said, can I sit down? She goes, sure. So I sat down, and I said, I had a dream about you last night. She said, oh God. I was like, no. It wasn't like that.
that could have gone really bad, Rob. That could have gone really bad.
So then, I said, I had a dream about your house. Okay, tell me about it. And I said, okay. I walked in, there was a bunch of people there, and I started just giving her details on her house. I said, okay, you walk here. On this side of the house is a bedroom. Here's another room. And then on this side is is your living room. It has a fireplace right in the center. Then, the front window's here. And then from there you walk in, and there's like a little dining room. From there you go into the kitchen. Then back here you go through this doorway. And there's a door. You open up the door, you go through the door, and then you go to the back of the house. And she goes, wait, what did you just say? And I said, no, you go through a doorway, and then you go in, and then you turn, and there's the back of the house. All right, you're coming in. We're going to go to my house at lunch. And so, we're going to bring, one of our coworkers, the three of us will go to lunch, and then we'll stop by my house. Okay, cool. So I'm walking through her house, and I'm like, wait a minute, where's the doorway? And she said, exactly. She said, you pictured something that nobody knows that was gone. The people that have come over now, we knocked out that doorway when we first moved in the house, because that's the support beam that goes across that you saw, that you're seeing right here. But yeah, there was a wall here, and there was a door that you had to go through. We knocked out that door, and nobody knew about that. How in the hell did you dream about that? And then she said, yes, you nailed my house, the layout of the house. You nailed it. But that freaked me out when you talked about that door. How in the hell is that even possible? And she said, you've been in my house. I said, I've never been in your house. So I saw her house when I astroplaned. I saw her house many years ago before that than what it was like today.
You proved astral traveling, but you definitely freaked out a friend. You lost a friend for sure. So there was a win and a lose there. She's like, my house, goodbye. But you're right. And how many, you've shared another situation like that with me, and a lot of the people you've introduced me to that have psychic abilities or have frequent experiences of astral traveling and doing this. And Michelle says, are you sleeping? And I do believe it's in a theta wave state. It can happen when you're sleeping, or it happens when your brain is in a theta wave state. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if you're in a twilight means that you're awakened from your sleep and you're kind of like in that in between stage from
Right.
waking, and then you're like groggy and just laying there. It can happen during that, or you know when, and you know when you first fall asleep, and then a lot of times you'll jump. It can happen within like 30 seconds before, and then when you jump, it's like, holy shit, I just had this dream and I was in a different location. And so that happened to me a few times. And my aunt told me, tell me about the dream you just had. And I was like, how in the hell do you know about a dream I just had? And she said, tell me about it. So I tell her about it. And then she said, you've been doing this since you've been a kid, right? And I said, yeah, how do you know? So I would tell her what some of the dreams that I was having. She was like, that's impossible. You weren't even born when with what you just told me. And because I saw one of my great great grandparents' houses, and they passed away before I was even born. And that house hasn't been in the family since the death.
Wow. That fascinates me. That absolutely fascinates me, and that's incredible. That's incredible. I wanted to point out, Rob, Raina brought up a comment, and I look to you, Raina, for help with psychic abilities and help explain things that are a little bit out of my area. Raina says astral planing and astral projection are different. Astral projection can be done while awake during meditation. So astral planing and astral projection, again, two different things, and they can happen when your brain or your body, when you're awake or in meditative state. And astral planing, I guess, would be defined as when your brain is in a theta wave state or in that in-between state.
You can do astral projection like with what I was doing now. Like, so if you just like sit there, you concentrate on something, you basically kind of black out, but you're still mentally awake. It's like when you zone out and you start daydreaming and somebody said, what do you think about? You go like, oh, wait, what? It's in that type of state. I could do that also. It's not very common, but I do it. I've done it during the show.
During this show?
Not during this show, but during my Saturday show, I've done it a few times.
I thought you were like, we're starting the show and you're like, I'm out of here, Josh, run the show. I'm going to go travel to another dimension. I'm sitting here rambling about, reverb pedals aren't good for you and you're off in like some distant dimension. I was picturing the worst. But the Saturday show, I would imagine, that's a totally different type of mood and element. And I can see how you being alone and doing this, and again, setting these times week after week and conducting these sessions, how I would imagine that would happen to you.
Yeah, I've done it.
This show is much more down to earth. I mean, let's face it. This show is completely different. We're just having an open discussion. We're learning about different things. We're discussing. We're learning from our friends joining us in the chat. I'm learning so much from people who have psychic abilities and things that I'm absolutely fascinated about. So this is more of the classroom and the learning session, and the Saturday show is putting it into practice. And I can see that from you. And we talked during the Saturday show, and I noticed a change very objectively in your behavior and how even you're speaking to me, and how even after the show when we talk, and how much different that is for you. And I notice a difference. I can see it.
It is different. But yeah, Kevin, so prior to my Saturday show, or even prior to, depending on what I'm going to do.
Great question.
Yeah, I do meditating. I also do mantras. A mantra is a little bit different. So, there's different types of mantras you can do. A lot of people don't believe in doing mantras because it can be a little dark. So everybody's different. You got to do whatever is good for you. It's just like prayer.
Right.
It's so everybody has their own techniques.
You know what I was going to say? I've heard so many different methods to beginning meditation or ITC, ghost box sessions, EVP, whatever you're engaging in to communicate. And for me, as Rob knows, I'm an optimistic, positive person. What works for me, and I've never had to speak of a negative experience. I've had my name. I've been called names and, different things through the radio. We've all had that. And that's actually really good evidence. I've never had anything negative happen to me, but what I even do is completely different. I just get excited. When you're about to see a movie or you're about to go on a roller coaster, maybe that's what I'd like to describe it as. I just feel warmth and love and excitement that I'm going to be conducting these sessions, and that I don't do anything before these sessions. And maybe that's wrong. I don't know. But what works for me is completely different than what other people do. And there's no right or wrong. There's just, I just get excited, and it seems to portray or manifest through my sessions. And my sessions kind of reflect my attitude, it seems like, most of the time, positive and, a little bit teasing. My sessions almost reflect my personality, that's another discussion. But what we manifest, sometimes what we go looking for, we find. What we manifest is returned to us. Very interesting.
That I don't know. I have no clue on how many people meditate or do anything before the show.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Honestly, I really don't think. If I had to give an honest opinion right now, I don't think anybody does. If I had to guess, I never get that impression that anybody does, or I've ever gotten that impression.
I haven't. I don't know, but
I don't know.
It's possible. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I'm actually trying to think of this. I don't think anyone's ever mentioned that in any of the chats.
No, nobody ever has. That's why I don't know.
And Len says, Len Dorman says, what works for an individual is what is right for that individual. Exactly. We're ITC, as much as we're researching, as much as we're finding out, we still, let's face it, we don't know what's going on. We just don't. No one has the concrete answers. That's obvious. And to say, well, you have to prepare this way for this thing that's unknown is really presumptuous, and kind of, it's coming to a conclusion too soon. You need to do right now what's right for you, what you're comfortable with, and really what you seek is what you shall find. And I found that people that want to go demon hunting at a dark place, guess what? They get that information. People that want to just facilitate communication and they're trying to conduct research, guess what? That's usually the communication they get back, by and large. Obviously, everyone gets their pigtails pulled and name called. It becomes a party line at times. But by and large, what you seek, you shall find. And I'm seeing that a lot more in ITC, that the intent of the individual and the energy has so much to do with the communication.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Kevin says the Saturday team reminds me of the physical mediums team they work with. Yeah. In fact, I don't think we realized it at first, Rob, but when you started the Saturday show, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And every single person who either is involved with the sessions or even someone who drops by that's new is immediately sucked in by the family atmosphere. Everyone is welcome. And everyone really is putting their intent and energy into receiving communication. Literally every single person cares. There's no one there that's flippant. There's no one there that's just, kind of lackadaisically, listening to this while folding their laundry. People are really putting their intent into this, and the results are fascinating. They're just incredible.
It is incredible. And that's why I tried Josh talked me into doing my experiment live on Saturday's show. And he was like, Rob, it's working. And I was like, what?
Yeah, I was like a little kid. I'm like texting you, like, Rob, it's working. You're like, shut up. I know it's working. I'm like, but it's working. You're like, shut up.
But it was just nuts. But the funny thing is the week before last, after the show, and it was maybe towards the end of the show, people were commenting, Rob, something's changed.
Yeah.
Something has changed. And I was like, what do you mean something's changed? No, something is there was a shift. It's totally different now. There was a shift, and you can see it. You can feel it. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? There was just so many things that happened, and I didn't even know. Oh, and then all of a sudden, yeah, then we started hearing voices coming through, and there was no audio playing. We were just talking, and voices were coming through. It was strange. I'm not gonna lie, but
Oh
then
no.
that's when everything just totally shifted.
Christina says, I've said to myself to bathe myself in white light, but no meditation. And there again, I've heard that expression of channeling or subjecting to the white light, protecting yourself and giving yourself that energy, that positivity, that love, that makes all the difference. And I do understand that. Raina says, from 5 minutes of opening my heart and white light to 30 minutes of silent 963 hertz meditation. And there we go back to frequency.
Yeah.
Frequency with the radio, frequency with our human body and our soul. There's a lot of commonalities. Frequency seems to be a big component of this.
And it is a big component of this. And the frequency, I think, has a lot to do with the brain waves, how the brain, how it puts you in a relaxed state. That relaxed state opens up your mind, and then all of a sudden you're just like open. You're like an open book. Now all of that communication is coming through because your thoughts are just flowing. Just everything. It's basically the perfect storm. You're putting all of the correct pieces into place to open up that communication.
And I think the more, here we go again, tying it back into direct radio voice, but even through Marcello Bacci's work and the work I've seen you do and others, Ron in the field, other people working with direct radio voice, you really begin to understand it's not just about the radio. In fact, again, I'm just throwing this out there. But is the radio even relevant? And now it is. It's been identified as a very important medium. Listen, I've got a million ghost boxes. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it seems like more and more we're understanding that the radio is a carrier, and we can scan the radio frequencies, and we can use a process of stochastic resonance to amplify those weak frequencies, receive that communication. But we're also finding that, hey, it's not necessary either. And Marcello Bacci had his tubes pulled out of his radio and unplugged, and he's getting communication through the radio, which
that's what. And I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to put you on the spot now.
I may get up and leave, but let's see what you have to say.
Now it's your turn to be put on the spot.
Awesome.
I mean, aren't you finding more and more that radio isn't even relevant anymore?
I think that now more than I did. I don't want to say it's irrelevant.
Well,
but,
I mean, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, yeah. It's the radio is acting as a carrier more than anything.
Yes, and there are so many similarities with what I'm seeing a human do without any transcommunication devices, and that the radio or devices like this may amplify it, but it's not necessary. Is it effective, and is it the most popular? And have we not proven that it works? Yes, of course. I'll always use my ghost boxes just because I love to do that. It's right. Interesting.
Right. No, right.
But from the research I've seen you do, and what other people in the field I've seen do, from Ron to Marcello Bacci to other people working at direct radio voice, there's people in other countries working with it. Paranormal's working with variations of not using radio, but working with noise and frequency. And I think to myself, well, radio is just one method. It's just a small snippet of the EM spectrum. So it's so much about the operator. And you're right, you put me on the spot. I can say that my theories have changed, and I'm moving away from saying radio is needed or necessary with ITC. This is what we need to be focusing on. No, I have changed, and I see that now firsthand.
Yeah, I mean and this is the thing that I'm finding also is like with what I'm saying. being sent videos of people doing work um, in the field, not using radio. Well, they are using radio, but in a different form factor. They're not using a ghost box really much
Right.
anymore. They're using different types of forms of communication. And people are now going to tube radios and
We're going
manual
backwards.
they're going backwards.
Yes.
Exactly. They're going away from they're like, "Holy crap, I'm getting better results now." That they've learned how to I think that they've tuned themselves on it's almost like people to go to a ghost box to learn how to do the communication. Once they learn how to and they make that bond on using a radio as a form of communication, now they open themselves up to try different means. And now they're finding out, you know what? I don't need that ghost box anymore.
Right.
I'm learning. Maybe it was just a technique that I was using the ghost box to learn
Right.
from. Now I'm going to something else, and I'm having actually better results
Right.
doing it this way than I was using a ghost box.
You know, Rob, how many times have I brought up Ron, who designed the mini box? He literally said he used his radio to a certain point, and he got to a point where he didn't even need it anymore. He was like, it literally was just training wheels to kind of kickstart his psychic abilities, or what we're all inherently gifted or born with to some extent or another. Again, I don't want to sound definitive here. I'm just speaking very freely, having a general conversation. But he even said that. He's like, my radios are great, but I didn't need it for very long. I started hearing these, my brain or my soul became, as he would say, the radio. He was an electrical engineer, and he was very skeptical and down to earth in many ways. Right. And even he noticed after a while, I didn't need my radio. And so there's been a lot of evidence throughout the decades that for many people, and I'm being very general here, that the radio has been just that, training wheels on a bicycle. And a lot of people have used the radio for a period of time, and then they don't need it anymore. That hasn't happened to me. But Raina says here, Rob proved it, Josh. I'm not educated on this, and I don't know who else is or has. Exactly. And it's, the more I look at this very specific evidence throughout ITC research, there's so much in common with those that have psychic abilities and what we're trying to accomplish using electronics as an aid. And there are so many parallels. And I think that we're slowly identifying them again, or reevaluating them. And a lot of people, like you said, in the UK and Europe, are going back to tube radios and manual scan and going to very simple setups to achieve this communication.
Yeah. I mean, some of the radios that they're using aren't cheap because how can you find an inexpensive desktop radio that's tube based that is going to be cheap? You're not going to be able to find one. Well, you're still going to spend several $100s on a good radio.
I was just going to say, you could probably find a broken, used classic tube radio for about $35 or $40 on eBay, but you're going to spend about $250 in really good tubes. You might have transistors that have to be replaced depending on the power amplifier, the power staging. There are different things that might have to be displaced. You might have wires that are cracked. You could spend up to $1,000 easily repairing a really good and useful tube radio. Yeah. Do you need a tube radio for direct radio voice? No. Is it novel, and is it, are tubes a really good way to bring proper power and gauge staging to radio communication? Yes. Mm-hmm. But you don't need them. In fact, Marcello Bacci took the tubes out. He was getting communication. So yeah. You don't. I use a $19 radio, $19 from, I think it was Goodwill. I found it. Nice little Eddie Bauer radio, and I've had some success with that. Nothing to write home about. Nothing that I would call Ron Iacovetti and say, you wouldn't believe what I found. I mean, nothing like that. But you don't need to invest a lot of money to engage in direct radio voice, or even what you're working with, Rob.
Right. So yes, Kevin, this is something that I have done. During some of the sessions that we do on Saturday, between sessions, we will get disembodied voices. And it has happened quite a few times.
Yes, that is true.
So,
That is true.
like what Raina was saying, yeah, it's like a tool like tarot cards or pendulums. Now, pendulums, here's the deal with pendulums. And you can even ask any parapsychologist. When you hold a pendulum, subconsciously you are moving that pendulum. And I've even proved that. And there was other people that were like, no, I'm not moving it. And if you watch somebody's hand, it's almost impossible for you to stay still. It's the heartbeat, everything causes the human hand to move, but subconsciously you're actually turning it in the direction that you don't want to use that. The best way to use a pendulum would be they have these little pyramid pendulum stands. You get that, you put a pendulum on that stand and you just let it sit there. If communication is going to happen, the pendulum will move. So that's going to take any type of false positive out of the equation. And that's how I have always explained on this. Is the same thing with dowsing rods. Dowsing rods, people don't realize, and you can ask a parapsychologist about this also. It's going to move in any direction because that's just how the human mind moves. It's psychokinesis. That's what's going to cause that to move. So you have to be very and there's so many things that you can explain away. You can't really use that as evidence that it's paranormal.
Well, now I'm asking you a question.
No,
a lot of people use dowsing rods, though. In terms of going back to the basics, I've heard of a lot of teams and a lot of experienced people use dowsing rods.
I understand that, but okay. There's also skeptics out there, and a parapsychologist will tell you this, that, you know what, it's part of psychokinesis. You can do the study on it. And that's why people, there's so many tools that are being used in the paranormal field that you have to be very cautious on using them. Yes, people might have great success with it. They might, try certain things and get the evidence that they're looking for. But I'm just saying you have to just be careful when you're using certain tools on things that can produce false positives.
Well, look, Raina makes a good point. You could also explain away the spirit box.
Absolutely.
You're not wrong. You're absolutely not wrong. Despite the intelligent communication that we seem to be all perceiving, I mean, really, that's what the skeptics' arguments are. And that's what
exactly. And so when I was using a spirit box on my Saturday show and skeptics were coming on, but you know what? So they would say, well, you're picking up a bunch of, radio broadcasts. Okay. Yeah, you're probably right. Can I explain? Can we prove that we're not? No. So it was happening so often that it was kind of pissing me off. I mean, I'm just going to be blunt. But you know what? I said, but that got me to thinking, you know what? I have to do something. They're absolutely right. They are absolutely 100% right. How can I make this even better? And how can I make it to where, okay, well, I'm going to do this, debunk this. When I started doing reverse speech, we're getting names, we're getting dates, we're getting a lot of
vulgar language.
We're getting detailed messages for people. How can you explain that? Because I can't.
You know what? It's one of those things where people say, well, there's radio bleed coming through. Well, it's actually all of these things are simultaneously existing. We're getting radio station bleed. We're getting white noise. and we're getting intelligent communication. Right? We just are. Some things are happening whether we want to believe them or not, or are able to explain them or not. But it's true. I mean, a skeptic can say you are getting radio bleed. Yes, we are. Well, that's audio pareidolia. Yes, at times there is. And even when I'm not using the radio and I go outside and live my everyday life, I experience audio pareidolia. It doesn't happen with ITC. So, I mean, we can't rule out, or we can rule out everyday communication with every single person we have and just say, well, I didn't hear that. That was something else. I mean, you can't do that. These things all simultaneously exist in the communication. But like you said, with reverse speech, it takes a lot of those false positives away, especially when you're getting through reverse speech, very intimate communication that the source is relaying to us about someone in the group or something going on, and people are saying, oh my gosh, I heard my deceased husband's voice say my name and then say something very private that only him and I knew about. I mean, how do you explain that through reverse, random, scan of the radio?
Right.
And how we all heard it. It wasn't just her. Did everyone else hear that word? Yes, we all heard it. I mean, it was loud and clear and legible. So that is hard to explain away. And I can't tell a skeptic they're wrong either. Well, there's radio bleed. Yeah, there is. There is.
Absolutely.
But we're also getting intelligent communication.
But like we said, I mean, with this show, we do, I mean, at least with me, I know I might piss a lot of people off because I'm just very open and very direct on what I say.
Yeah, you piss me off a lot, yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to offend anybody, but I'm just saying it like it is, because I've been there. I've been doing this. I've been investigating more than 2/3 of my life. Maybe more. Maybe 3/4 of my life. That's probably more accurate. Probably about 3/4 of my life I've been investigating.
You started very young.
Yeah. I mean, let's just put it this way. I started when I was 12.
Yeah. Jeez. Man,
I mean, I went ghost hunting by myself when I was 12.
And we're both like, what, 400 now? So that's a few centuries of raw experience getting your hands dirty.
Yeah. So, so I've learned a lot. And, I've talked to a lot of parapsychologists. I was friends with people that were, heading up the UCLA paranormal or parapsychology, I guess, education center.
That shall not be talked about, but yes, technically, but unofficially.
Yeah. I mean, right. I mean, yeah, it's kind of crazy how that whole thing is, but, and they worked some huge cases.
Yeah.
Somebody that I was talking to worked the entity case. I don't know if anybody's aware or knows about that case, but it was crazy. That's probably like one of the most crazy cases that I've ever seen. And it was worked on by true parapsychologists. So anyway, what else was I going to say? So, I mean, just that's why, there's a lot of things that I do research on with a lot of hardware, with a lot of equipment that's being used in the field. And that's why I just say you have to be careful, even if it's a pendulum, even if it's dowsing rods, whatever, because it has been proven, by different people that are parapsychologists that, psychokinesis happens a lot more than you think it does.
Right.
Subconsciously, we do a lot of things that we're not aware of.
Well, and I can't think of any piece of electronic equipment, and correct me if I'm wrong, that doesn't have a warning that it's susceptible to RF interference. A lot of the inexpensive low sample rate recorders that people bring on investigations are sensitive to RF interference. So you have to be careful with EVP recorders. They have low magnetic shielding, and they pick up anything and everything other than voices. Obviously, we know that EVP can be captured on any recording device. At the same time, you want to be careful even with that. That's to be aware of. I don't know if we're going off tangent here, Rob, reel me back in, but at the same time, just be aware of everything you're using, every piece of equipment, even a radio or ghost box. And Rob, I think we'll address this on another show is, pros and cons to using a ghost box in an investigation. And there are a lot of cons, and I'm pro ghost box. I love radio-based ITC. I really do. But it's in my opinion, and we've discussed this, there are situations you necessarily maybe don't want to use it because of outside factors that maybe weren't considered or that you need to consider depending on the location you're going to. And we can get into that in another show. And we'll present the pros and cons and have everyone join in on that and their experiences using a ghost box on location.
Yeah. I mean, I've done it for research, but this is way later in. This is a thing. So if somebody goes into a location blind, and there's so much more research that needs to be done rather than just going in blind, doing EVPs. Yeah, that's what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to do EVPs. You're going to want to do a lot of other experiments. The last thing that you want to do, after everything else has been done, is yes, then you can go back. If you've been in that location many times, then you could go back and, all right, let's just try a ghost box session. Let's see what happens. But there's a time and a place. And that's all I'm saying. You don't want to do it right off the bat.
I am not a seasoned paranormal investigator by any means. In fact, I don't have a lot of investigative experience under my belt in terms of going on location. It's always been in a sound laboratory or in an isolated situation. But I would happen to agree, and I think it also depends on the equipment you're bringing along. It could depend on your cell phone. It could depend on the person's mood, the intentions of the group. I mean, there's a lot of things to consider. Who you're going with.
Exactly.
There's just, and a lot of you may already know. But it's worth addressing, and I think I'd like to bring it up on another show is talk about the pros and cons of certain equipment and location. And there are a lot of things that until I spoke to you, Rob, and again, I don't have the investigative experience you do, but you've mentioned a lot of things to me, and I thought, maybe that wouldn't be such a great idea to use it in this particular location or in this situation. How many people are with you? Again, we talk about psychoacoustics, we talk about room acoustics. There are so many different things that could affect the responses or how responses are perceived. And even if it's in the dark and you can't see well, that will have an impact on your hearing, and your other sensors will kick in. And there's positive. I mean, we'll go into this on another show. I feel like I had to reel myself in. I feel like we're going to derail this.
No. I mean, but it's just like I said, because there's so much chaos already when you first go in for an investigation. And even though you're there maybe the second time, there's still a lot of chaos. You're trying to figure out what's there in the location. There's a lot of factors going into play. You're not familiar with the location yet. If spirit is there and they want to communicate with you, you haven't developed that rapport with that spirit. And I found it's very rare that you're going to get a lot of evidence on your first go around. It might take hours. I mean, if you are there, you're going to have to bond with let's say you're there with an owner of, let's just say you're in a house.
Okay.
You're going to have to build that rapport. The spirit there, if they want to communicate with you, what I have found in my experience is you have to build that relationship with the client. Once you have that relationship built, because you have to remember, if there is spirit there, they're observant. They're watching your every move. They're watching, who is this new person here? I've never seen them before. Okay. But once they start seeing that rapport built, they start seeing that the client has, oh my God, they're like open, they're laughing, they're talking, they're just, they're just sitting here talking and laughing, whatever. And now they can kind of sense that the the client now is at ease. They can, because it's like, they can feel the tension in the air. They can feel, okay, everything feels normal. These people they belong here.
Right.
And then now you start easing into the investigation. You start interviewing the client. Now you're going to listen back to those interviews, and you'll even start finding answers from somebody else that wasn't in the room at that time when you were asking those questions being answered. Then you go back the second time. Okay, now let's start the true investigation. We're going to start getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's going on here. Then you start going back through, you do all of that, you gather more evidence. Now, on the third time you come around, okay, you know what? Let's try another experiment. Let's break out a ghost box. Let's sit down with the client and conduct a ghost box session. Now you're doing that. So, I mean, there's always a time to ease into it. That's why it just irks me. The first go around, we walk into a location, somebody breaks out a ghost box, and we're trying to gather more evidence. We're trying to conduct interviews. We're trying to do a lot more things. And other people are like off in the back room doing a ghost box session. And now all they're doing is contaminating what we're trying to develop here.
That was
it just throws in a wrench in the whole thing. So
that's a very good point. And it was just going to say audio contamination, and it really has an impact. And you'd be surprised if you don't know the acoustics of the building or the materials that the building's made with. There's so many other factors that audio can travel, and then they can contaminate evidence. And before you know it, that one piece of evidence you thought was legitimate maybe was something from the ghost box down the hall, and then that threw off your whole investigation because now you're being led in a completely different direction. There are just so many variables. In fact, the one and only serious major investigation I've been on was with you, Rob. And I remember I was all, I walked in, I'm like, yeah, I'm an ITC researcher. Rob has no idea what he's in for. I've got these radios. Like, I'm just gonna show up and solve this thing. And I showed up and I started pulling on my radios, and you're like, not yet. I was like, okay, you were in charge. You're the captain of the ship. I said, okay. And I put him away. And for months of the investigation, we were there. And I don't know that I even used equipment. It was observation. It was talking to the owner of the house. It was developing a relationship. And that seemed.
But what happened on the we're going to talk about this on this show. But what happened on the last time when we said, okay, this is what we're going to do, and then all hell broke loose.
Right. Well, yeah, and let's save that for a show, because there was so much that'll be such an exciting show, and there's actually a lot of humor involved too. It was a pretty incredible experience. But at the same time, you were more concerned with me developing a relationship with the owner of the home, understanding our team, bonding with our team. And there was the basic principles we learned as children, in kindergarten and first grade, develop friendships, develop relationships, get to know one another, respect, be humble, be compassionate. Those things seem to very much apply in an investigation, and even through instrumental transcommunication, through psychic abilities. There are these universal laws of love and compassion and relationship that, know no bounds. And that was one of the things I remember you instilled in our group when we first started investigating this home. It was a very serious case. It wasn't something we show up for a few hours and leave. We were there for almost a year. And that was one of the things we said, Josh, put your radios away.
But here was the thing.
We're not there yet.
I mean, it took, 9 months of us being there a whole weekend, and still not really, it was dark, and we're like, shit, well, there's still so much work we got to do.
Right.
And Spirit did not want to communicate, did not even want to show its face.
Well,
it would show its face once in a while. And when it did, it was like, holy crap. And then it was gone. It wanted to have nothing to do with us. And it was like, crap. It took 9 months going there almost every weekend, at least twice a month. At least twice a month.
It was about twice a month for me, yeah.
For a whole weekend. So from Friday night till Sunday, we were there 2 times a month for 9 months before we even broke ground on anything. Um, and even then, I was like, nope, don't even break out a ghost box yet. Don't
Hey,
even
right. Right.
don't do this, don't do that. Um, it was hell. I mean, it was a lot of work and a lot of freaking, and there was no TV. There
Right.
was
That
there,
was interesting. We got to talk about that too.
there was no TV in the house. There was no radio in the
There
house.
was nothing to do in the house.
There was nothing to do. I mean, the only thing we could just hang out and talk, and that
right.
was it.
Well, and the homeowner was very nice and cordial, seemed very normal. And I'm looking around, I'm like, what do you do here when it's just you? And it just, that's a whole separate conversation.
It was odd, but
It was very strange.
anyway, that's just what I'm just saying about the whole thing. Yeah,
Well,
it's just crazy.
and I remember, Rob, I brought down, and I was at a different place in my research, and I don't come from a place of ego, but at the same time, when we showed up to the investigation, I was so proud of my ghost boxes and the research I had done. I really thought, well, Rob doesn't know what he's talking about. And, I'd turn on my ghost box, and we'd have breaks, whatever. I just check the batteries and do things. And even walking around the house very briefly, even on a break, I wasn't getting any evidence. And we talk about that element of free will, and that they or the others or spirit didn't want to talk to me. They weren't ready to talk, like you'd stated. We didn't gather a lot of evidence right away, and I didn't get anything. And I was very shocked. I was like, wow, this is. I knew at that point I was learning something new about ITC and the element of free will. And Donna says this. Yes, they are people, and the people or spirits or the energy in that house or what we were investigating, they weren't ready to talk to us. Mm-hmm. No matter what equipment I brought out, no matter how much experience I had, didn't matter. It just didn't matter.
You even had a DR60. I had recorders. I mean, 4 recorders going at any one given point in time? Not one single EVP. Yeah. Never, not one. For 9 months.
I think that's what kept us going back. The person was having these problems, and we weren't capturing evidence, or I wasn't.
No, but you felt when you walked in the house.
Yes, and again,
holy crap! This is like super heavy. You would walk in the back room, and it was like you walked into it was like walking outside from an air conditioned room and outside where it's like in middle of Florida with 100% humidity. It just smacked you in the face.
Everything felt labored. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, so it just was not ready to communicate. And that's what I state all the time. They have to get comfortable with you. But it just did not want us there. And when it did want to communicate with us, it was not good. Let's just put it that way.
And again, I think maybe the next show we should just start talking about this investigation, because as optimistic and as positive as I am, and my results in my research have been
I think
cooperative and communicative. Yeah.
You know what? I think next week's show, that's what we're going to talk about. I can bring on a guest. I can maybe even coax the guest that was possessed.
That would be interesting.
She would come on. I could get people. I can get people to come on to talk about this case. Maybe we should talk about it.
At one point there was 12 people on the team working. We were all sitting in the room, all from different areas and specialties. And that was the one time, Robin, again, it's 12 years. Well, I've been working with EVP longer, but in terms of my investigative experience, has all been ITC, private research, going to work, working with equipment, coming home, working with equipment. But it was the pinnacle and probably the only, I will say, very negative experience I've ever had with communication. And everything before this was pretty cooperative and optimistic and positive, and everything after has been, I haven't had any issues since, but that experience was negative. And that's what taught me, even though I don't experience the negative energy that often in my research, that it does exist. There is a yin and a yang, to be very general. It is out there. I don't go looking for it, so I don't find it. My research, I really manifest into a positive direction, and I try and look for cooperation. But it exists, and it is real. It is out there. I didn't like it, and that's part of the reason why. If you remember, I told you I even wrote you a letter after that investigation. I'm like, dude, I can't be on your team anymore. If this is how these investigations are going, I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
I mean, it was frightening.
So, okay.
It was eye-opening. It was eye-opening.
I'll give you guys just a little snippet. After this whole investigation, and we kind of dealt with what we needed to deal with, it was me and I can't even say his name, but somebody, I had somebody come in and help me out. He's the one that got rid of what was there. And it took him a long time. But anyway, come to find out afterwards, there was a psychic that gave us this case. That psychic later told me, she said, Rob, I really have to tell you something about that case, and I feel really bad. And I said, what's that? She said, the homeowner was a witch, and she brought everything into the house, and she didn't know how to get rid of it.
Are you sure?
That's what the person that you know told me.
Okay, because you haven't told me this, and I would find that very hard to believe. You're talking about the homeowner.
Yes, the homeowner was a witch.
How? I mean, they're so sweet and kind to me, and gave me a hug and said, thank you for helping me. And, I mean, we talked about the most innocent things, and back in the 60s, this hot dog stand was over here. I mean, that would be the last person I would ever pick out of a lineup that would be had ill intention, or I don't even know what I'm trying to say. The person was very sweet and very nice.
No, I thought so too. And that's why I said, Sarah, are you sure? And she said, Rob, I should have told you guys this earlier.
Wait, our Sarah?
Yes.
Why am I always left out of the loop on these things?
She messaged me.
She didn't message me.
She messaged me about 6 months or maybe even a year after we did the case.
Then this whole thing got much more strange.
Anyway.
Okay. Well, we'll discuss that. We'll discuss that. Because now I'm thoroughly confused.
Well, and she told me that, I don't know if you knew, but she was having problems in her other house.
That I do know.
Okay.
Right? No, okay. She was very open about that.
Yeah.
She was very open about that.
She never said anything till later.
But wait, okay, and this is what I don't understand, and I don't know much about witchcraft or witches, so I want to be very respectful. But why would a witch have a problem in her own home that she
brought something in and she didn't know how to get rid of it? She summoned something.
So she called me? What am I going to do? I'm not the right person for that. Like, I work with sound. I don't know how to help you.
Well, let's just say that she was dealing with the dark arts. Let's just put it that way.
Wow. Well, it would explain the activity in the home. It would explain the activity in the home, but I had no idea. And maybe it's just I'm oblivious and naive. I don't know. A lot has changed on my perception of this. We need to talk about this on the next show.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. Yeah, it was just with what we were dealing with. It was not good. Anyway.
See, you know what? Then now I'm really intrigued if we can get any of the team members that were on that investigation to come onto the show and we can talk with them. That would be fascinating, because now I've got a whole different outlook on this investigation. And again,
we can even ask Sarah if she wants to go on, and she can tell you.
Yes.
I still have the messages on Messenger.
Because the homeowner, the person who owned the properties, was contacting us for years after the investigation had finished, after the person you had requested come to the home to, I'll just be very general and say cleanse the home to make it happy again.
Yeah.
She was still contacting us. I mean, almost like, just like, no, there's no more problems. And I'm thinking, well, okay, well, how can I help you?
So there was no more problems, and then she ended up renting out the house. I don't know if you knew that.
That I know, to a dentist.
Okay.
I believe, right?
Shortly after the dentist moved in, he started having problems.
So we didn't do our job, did we?
It might have been that, or she might have gone back to the house and was doing things. I don't know. I lost contact after I gave her back the keys to the house. Yeah, basically, she would message me every now and then, but the messages were always weird. So I just ignored them. And
well, it kind of freaked me out. Like the messages started getting cryptic and very coded. Like she's a very nice person, very down to earth. You never suspect. And then they started getting weird. And I was just like, remember I messaged you and I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Anyway. Yeah. So no, she had a front about her. And I would always find it odd that I would find her basically passed out in her car. And while we're investigating, I would go outside and she's in the car asleep.
Right.
And I would be like, what the hell are you doing here? And she was like, how did I get here? She would be like out of it.
Well, so she gave you the keys to both of her homes and she was like, come down anytime. I mean,
yeah, it was weird.
Yeah. We'll talk about this. I have all the audio evidence. I mean, I literally, I'm looking at the hard drive. So we'll pull some stuff up we captured and talk about it. And maybe other people, our friends of the show who are listening have had odd experiences investigating. It was my one and only serious investigation. And it convinced me to stay in my studio and not ever leave again. So,
oh no, Kevin, this house was cleansed several times. And then basically I had a demonologist come out who was actually...
That guy freaked me out, dude.
He was basically, he was a demonologist that was certified by the Vatican. And the way that I found out was he showed me his credentials later. And when he started speaking in Latin, in old Latin, I was like, what the hell? And then I was like, wow. And then I talked to somebody else that kind of gave me, that he was legit. And I knew he was legit because of how he was speaking and what he was saying and what he was doing and what I witnessed. I was the only one that was allowed in without any, he wouldn't let me bring in any equipment, none. And he said, whatever you do not move out of your position.
Rob, my voice cracked.
I was shitting my pants. I kid you not.
Right.
With what I was witnessing, what I was hearing, what I was seeing. I literally, and I don't get freaked out at all, but what I saw, literally, I wanted to run out of the house.
His interaction with me. When he was there, we were outside. He looked me up and down from my feet to my head, and he looked me dead in the eyes, and he's like, "You wait outside."
Yeah,
just like that. He knew this guy is not. He just read my aura, whatever the case was. He's like, "You wait outside." I was like, "Okay, not a problem. I'm gonna be in my car across the street." And then you guys were in there a while. That was interesting. But yeah, he looked the part. I mean, he had a very intimidating aura about him, like he was there for business. Certainly nothing I'd ever seen before.
No, and we were there when he did that, we were there for a few hours.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
See,
I've never seen anything like that.
Let's contact part of the team. Let's get them on the show. Let's talk about this. Because I think other people who are investigating can relate to this, or they'll have some type of similar experience.
Kevin, here's the thing. I never showed fear in that house. Never, not once. I stayed in that house by myself on several occasions. because a homeowner called me and said she was having some issues. So I went down there and nobody else was available. So I went down to the house and stayed in the house by myself. And that's the most stupid thing now looking back at it, that was the most stupid thing I've ever done in my life.
Well, several people had, when they slept over at the house, they had some bad experiences.
Yeah. That was the most stupid idea that I have ever had. I'd rather go to South Central LA in heavy gang territory and in, opposing gang colors than walk into that place and sleep in that house by myself,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I don't know which one I'd pick.
Let's just put it that way.
Well, and the Vitrina and Reina are talking about a figure that was discussed there. That's very weird that they're bringing that up. Did you mention that name, or did they bring that up? Because that's exactly what we experienced.
No, I brought it up before.
You did? Okay.
We'll have the amulet or her sigil on my mirror.
I thought you broke that mirror and you disposed of it properly.
We couldn't break it, but I disposed of it. But anyway, yeah, I still have the sigil hanging up on my black mirror.
Oh, that's what that is.
It's symbolic to me. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that case next week.
Yeah, and again, we've got a week to line everyone up to get as many people. We can ask Sarah. There's a few other people we can talk with and get them on the show. Eric I worked with him a lot when you weren't even there. We were down at the house. I went down with him.
Yeah.
We had some experiences after a few months of getting to know the location and the person. We started having some experiences. I witnessed him having some odd experiences. He was getting some amazing communication. He could probably talk about his experiences as well.
Yeah, I was face to face with her also when she attacked somebody that was there. And the first time, this girl was attacked multiple times, but the first time, that she attacked her and possessed her, when she released her and came out of her body, I was face to face with her. And she was pissed.
Wow. Yeah. Good night, Raina. Good night, Katrina. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
But yeah, we'll
now you know what next week's topic is. Very, very plainly. Well, that's what we're going to dive into.
I got to get Eric so he can come on the show.
Yeah, it'll give us time to line up some people and discuss that. And
I mean, I do have 2 of the possessions on video, but I can't show them, unfortunately. And I still have them.
Well, that would depend on the person we filmed.
No, it was her. I told her I'd never share that with anybody.
Well, okay, so I wasn't sure if that was her wish or yours. I wasn't sure, but I was just the guy holding the video camera, so I'm just like Rob's like, keep filming. I'm like, okay, and yeah, that was interesting.
Anyway, so we do have on the lighter note, we do have a commercial or a public announcement from our good friends.
Oh, our sponsor, yes.
Afterlife Productions.
Roll it.
All right, so we'll take Elijah. We'll take your or Alicia. We'll take your question after we show this our little public announcement.
Paranormal Apologies, a unique paranormal equipment company shopping experience where you order products, and we give you the privilege of waiting 2 years for your products simply because our fucks ran away a long time ago. Enjoy waiting while we buy a big fancy hotel and have party.
Hold up, something happened.
Did you stop that on purpose?
Yeah, I stopped it on purpose. Can you guys hear the audio? Because it sounded like it was coming out of it didn't sound like it was coming out of it sounded like it was coming out of the computer speakers.
I heard it in my headphones.
You did hear it?
I heard everything, yes. Woo.
Why am I hearing that? Okay, let me play it again. I'm sorry. Let me try it again.
Good night, Edward.
Gullible paranormal customers, introducing
Why can't I hear it?
Paranormal, a unique paranormal equipment company shopping experience where you order products, and we give you the privilege of waiting 2 years for your products simply because our fucks ran away a long time ago. Enjoy waiting and waiting while we buy a big fancy hotel and have parties and get pissed with our friends who are more important than you. Have the privilege of not being able to complain about delays because, as we said, we don't give two fucks. We forgot to put our products out of stock when orders got too large, but you, the customer, can suffer for our mistake. We have our fancy hotel now and don't want to be bothered by you pieces of shit. So remember the name, Paranormal Apologies, not giving a flying fuck for the last 2 years. Available while stocks last. Oh wait, there is nothing in stock, because we fucked up. I'm off back to my fancy hotel to have a piss up with my friends. See y'all later, bitches.
I've no more fucks to give. Thank you very much.
This is how you make enemies.
I give 0 fucks.
I know that. I'm aware of that. And that's what makes this situation so much more tricky. Is it's not wrong, but ooh. Oh my gosh. I don't know. Anyway, who had a question? Was it I'm trying to figure out quick, Rob. Who has a question? Quick. Quick. God, dude. We don't have a legal team. You know that, right?
I know that.
Okay. It's us. It's just you and God. Oh my gosh. Oh, we're just pushing buttons left and right. I don't know what to say. I can't even find the question anymore. I mean, just going after it.
Wow. So
oh, here it is. Alicia. Alicia says, my 5-year-old son has been saying that he can see Officer Kramer and that he looks sad and that he has blood coming from his head. Looked it up and found out that there was an Officer Kramer, oh my gosh, was shot in the head and killed in 1984, a year after I was born. Could it be that he has been seeing him and making himself known that he is okay? Wow, Alicia.
Yeah, I mean, that can be of him trying to show himself, because he could be trying to give a message that yes, he's okay, and he's moved on.
Right.
You can ask your son if he's said anything to him. Has he, tried to, has Mr. or Officer Kramer tried to communicate with him or talk to him? Has he given him any messages or anything like that? I'm just trying to think of when I was that age, what I would listen out for, or a lot of time, but I never did. I just saw people coming to me, but never had a message per se. Looking back.
Alicia, that's, and for your 5-year-old to be so specific with those details. And from what it sounds like, and you haven't mentioned this, but to not be scared of it, but more or less just to be open to it, as children so much are, and receive that information and share that with you. How many children would actually go as far as to share that? Maybe some would. I have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old, so I'm trying to put myself in your shoes and understand that. But that's incredible, and I'd be curious to find out what other experiences your son has had, and how he's interpreting them, or how he's able to process the information that your son is receiving. But if he's very open with it and talking with you, I think like Rob said, I would ask very honest and open questions, and don't hide anything, and be very open about it and say, honey, what else are you seeing, or what are you feeling when you see this? And I would imagine you've asked if he's scared or not. I can't imagine he is. Doesn't sound like he is. That's wow. 1984. That was a long time ago. Well, if there's no time and space, then really we're the only ones that seem to have that problem in this dimension. We only can move in one direction through time. So
yeah,
far.
and like what Kevin said, don't scare him. Don't let him believe like something's
Right.
wrong with him.
Right.
See that, and I'm going to tell you something right off the bat. So when I discovered my abilities, and yes, I know I'm talking about myself a lot, but it's just because of I'm trying to explain what happened to me as a kid. So when I started discovering my abilities, but I didn't know what they were. I just had a weird feeling that would come through my body, which now I could say it was anxiety. I got so much anxiety
Right.
to where you get butterflies in your stomach. I would get that feeling, and I would just like, okay, what's here? And then I would literally run. I'd turn on the light and run. And then my parents were like, "What's the matter? Why are you running? Why are you scared? Why are you leaving the lights on?" So that just led them to, so I always got that. Why are you running? Why are you scared? What are you afraid of? So because I always turned on lights. So they just thought I was afraid of the dark.
Right.
So they started sending me, so I started going to see these doctors, these people, and I would go into a room and just talk to them. What were they? They were psychiatrists. Later I found out. So as I got older, I asked my mom, so remember one of you guys that would take me to the doctor? What were you guys, why did I have to go see all these specialists? Well, we thought, you're afraid of the dark, so we're trying to get you over that. And I'm like, I was never afraid of the dark. This is what, and then later in life, I said, this is what was happening. Why didn't you guys open up to that? And hindsight, my mom was like, damn it, I should have listened to my sisters, because one of my aunt was a psychic. She used to do card reading. She was basically consider herself a witch. She labeled herself as a witch. And she would do a lot of white magic. But my mom didn't want me to even think that her son had those same abilities, because she didn't have it. Her younger sister had it. And then I got it, but she never had it. So she didn't understand it. And she didn't want to believe that it was passed on to me. So she tried to label that, oh, he's afraid of the dark. Anyway, so with that said, yeah, please do not, make him feel like something's wrong with him. Just talk to him about it. And that's why I said, ask him if there's any messages that were passed on to him. Or if Officer Kramer had any messages for him or anything like that, to see, what's going on with him. And he might just have abilities. And you just have to, I know he's probably way too young to, later on in life, maybe he might want to develop those. Everybody's different. Or he'll just forget about it and kind of push it aside. That's what a lot of people do. But anyway, that's what I would do. Just asking him to see if he had any message, or if Mr. Officer Kramer, ever tried to talk to him, or if he said anything to him. Did he have any questions that he was asking? Just try to find out if there's any type of communication.
Thank you, Alicia, for asking that. It's a very important question. And a lot of us are parents, and we have children that have either noticed things, observed things, or have abilities. And it sounds like your son does and is open to it, and like you said, feels safe when he sees Officer Kramer. But thank you for asking that question and trusting us in the audience to help talk that out with you. Yeah, we're gonna have it. I noticed, Rob, it's 10:30, but we're gonna have quite the show next time.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't wait to open this up. I really can't, because it's been a long time, and there's been other reasons why too, but I can't wait to open this up.
Yeah, and I think like with tonight, I mean, yes, it was a little bit all over the place, but with what Josh opened up with, talking about direct radio voice, and then kind of segued into like with what I'm working on, and the relevance behind, a lot of the research. I mean, when it all comes down to it, there's so much research that we don't even know what's going on. But the bottom line is there's more to communication out there. So much more than just, a ghost box. There's so many different levels. And
Right.
it feels like what I was saying earlier. It just feels like, ghost box is just like a very small part of it. That kind of gets you into the ITC area. I mean, doing the research or the study, and then from there you kind of move on to other areas. And it just feels like there's so many other researchers out there that are doing bigger things than you know than ITC research using ghost boxes. But
and a lot of people in the private sector and organizations that don't make themselves known, unless you know someone directly involved or you have word of mouth. It's interesting. The rabbit hole goes very deep.
It's very deep, very deep. And, and it's sad how, like what Raina and a couple others said, ego plays a huge part in this field. And it's sad because ego was never, ever a topic. When I first started doing research, serious research, and I was working with a lot of parapsychologists, a lot of people that were well known in the field, and then some other psychics that were kind of teaching me a lot of things. There was everybody was sharing information. So everybody was logging everything. Everybody had logs. I mean, literally logs and logs and logs of documentation of different cases.
Right. And back then it was, do you have a pencil sharpener? I just broke my tip.
Exactly right. And
right.
And that's all everybody had. I mean, there was no equipment. The equipment that people had were a reel to reel, or
yes.
or a cassette tape. Right. And then when micro cassette tapes became popular, now I'm really aging myself. When somebody first brought in a micro cassette recorder to an investigation, we're like, wow, that's pretty cool. Look how small this thing is. Opposed to bringing in, a full size cassette recorder with an external mic that you just, hook up onto it had like a little stand, and you just put that up, or if you got creative, you'd hang it up on something, just to try to pick up the acoustics in the room better, because those mics were directional. So hanging it up, it kind of acted omnidirectional, which it really wasn't, but it picked up the room.
Simulated omnidirectional.
Exactly. I mean, but it would pick up, the echoes and stuff off of the walls. And it worked. But anyway,
you can get creative with sound reflection, and you can turn a polar pattern of a mic that's unidirectional or cardioid into something special if you just work with angles and geometry. I mean, you really can.
No, yeah, but those mics were unidirectional. Yeah. I mean, that was it.
Right.
It was just whatever you pointed it at, that's what it picked up.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway. So no, I just wanted to thank everybody for tuning in. I'm sorry that, I'm just a little out of it. Um, like I said, it's just been very emotional. I've been very emotional for the last few days. And been dealing with a lot of heavy stuff over the last couple of weeks since I've tapped into what I've discovered. It's become very emotional, and very stressful, all in one, just because I've had to, talk to several people. Um, but anyway,
We're closing out the show and we're getting some hot topic questions. I don't know what you want to do.
what was that?
Pete Wells says, hello all, I'm only into this for a few months and I run the typical mass-produced radios. Nothing wrong with that. And a few apps, fine. And I've had good success with them. Recently discovered this channel and I'm here and I can't even read. And I'm learning a lot here. Pete, thank you so much for joining us. We're learning a lot from you. I'm just as much as you're learning from us, I'm learning from our audience. This is a classroom type setting. All questions are welcome. All experience levels are welcome. So please join us. Please come back. I think you'll see that we kind of have a tight knit group and we really do learn a lot from each other. And Natalie asked, could I ask you what you think of the spirit box? Oh my gosh, what an involved question. What do we do? We're going on 3 hours. Do we answer them or say come back?
No, I mean, you can answer it. So with PD's question, here is a little radio. You can buy these on eBay. These work better than any other manufactured ghost box or mass produced ghost box. This works better than the S box. This, in my opinion, works better than the SB7 and SB11. This also does forward and reverse speech. And it's not very annoying.
Reverse speech or reverse scan?
Or reverse scan.
I was going to say, wow, if it does reverse speech.
No, reverse scan. I'm sorry.
No,
no. It does random scan.
Random scan. Okay. Yeah, random scan.
I'm sorry. I'm just like, I must be tired.
No. I am too, man. I can't even read.
But these little radios work really well. I can use this over any boutique box that has white noise, honestly. And it's not annoying. And I think it works well. And they're cheap. They're like $80.
Right.
And it has a rechargeable battery. Oh, and it has a built-in recorder. So you can put in an SD card and actually record your sessions. So it works.
Pete, please come back though. We're obviously getting to a point in the show where I feel like we don't want to go too long, but so much of what you're saying, we're addressing. The name 7 has come through for you. It's come through for a lot of our colleagues. It's a name that seems to be surfacing much more. One of our fellow researchers, Matthew Jackson, has documented the name 7 a lot in his sessions. Very credible researcher. He is very knowledgeable. If you can look up the Paraholics on YouTube, the Paraholics, you'll see some documentaries that he's done and the research he's conducted is quite fascinating. And he talks a lot about the name 7. But please come back to our show because we'll be discussing that. Oh boy, the question about what do we think of the spirit box?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I just announced that I'm no longer building ghost boxes.
They suck. We don't like them.
Honestly, it was like what we said. It's a good tool.
Yes, it is,
to learn about ITC research. It can take a little while for you to, I guess, bond with the radio. The thing is like, let's say you buy a ghost box, any ghost box. Use it as often as you can, as much as you can. Do 5-minute burst sessions. I typically tell people don't do longer than 5-minute burst sessions at a time. So just do a burst session. Listen for responses, and then wait a few minutes, try another burst session. So always try to do them in short burst sessions. unless you're getting a lot of communication coming through. If you're getting more communication coming through, keep on going. Go longer than 5 minutes. But then you're going to find that, the spirit you were communicating with is just going to taper down. And then, or sometimes you won't get any communication. You can go for 30 minutes and not get any communication. So just like I said, the more you bond with it, the more,
Right.
the better results you're going to get.
Perfectly stated.
So Kevin, real quick, this is a TAKH. That's who manufactures it. It's just like some Chinese knockoff, whatever. But it's a TB-1 is a model. But the manufacturer is TAKH. If you just type in Ghost Box on eBay, just look for it. You're going to see the S box, but this one is all black. The S box will say S box on it somewhere. You'll see red lettering, but this one's just all white, black and white.
And Natalie, to kind of, you're new here. Thank you for joining us and sacrificing your time and listening, even if it's for a few minutes. We hope you come back. In general, the premise of this show is we are the ITC and Paranormal Podcast. And one of the things that we subscribe to is what other ITC researchers have discovered over the years, is that the radio since the 50s, since Dr. Konstantin Radova and Frederick Jurgensen, in some way or another has been used to facilitate communication. And essentially what we're doing is scanning the radio frequencies and using the radio to amplify the communication. Very simple definition, but through scanning it, tonight we talked about direct radio voice, not scanning it, setting it to a particular signal and leaving it there. Whether it's scanning it, whether it's leaving it in one position, somehow or some way this show discusses how the radio is an important medium in ITC. So when you say spirit radio, it really encompasses so many different best practices using the radio, but we do believe the radio is an important medium for ITC. Even though Rob is moving on from it and leaving the Ghost Box building behind, so to speak, Rob, you would still say the Ghost Box is effective and successful. I mean, it's not like...
I'm not saying that it's not.
Right.
No, I mean, like I said, it's a good stepping stone.
Right.
I don't think it's just a very, very minute part of ITC.
And that's true. There's visual ITC. There's so many different forms. And please come back to the show because we're going to eventually discuss this and hopefully bring more people onto the show that have expertise in visual ITC, water ITC. Vape ITC is now, a very popular thing. So there's different methods to communicate. It's not just audio, but we'll hopefully address them all.
So here's something very, very interesting. I know it's getting late, Josh, but
and listen, I'm good, but I don't want our audience to be like, those guys go on for 3 hours. I'm okay if you're okay.
I'm good.
I'm good.
So here's something interesting. So with this whole thing with ITC, now I have learned with the new project that I'm working on that there is something more out there. And this is where higher learning comes into play. Now, higher learning, you would know more about when you deal with mediumship. So there's a hierarchy with communication. Now, there's low-level communication, and then there's higher.
That's me.
Then there's higher levels of communication. So dealing with Ghost Box is on the lower plane. And then once you go up to a higher plane, it's totally different.
Right.
And it's basically a hierarchy. It's whenever you're dealing with mediumship, you have to go in these different steps, these different levels. So when you start dealing with other things on higher communication, it could be, God, now I'm going to start sounding crazy. Yes, it could be extraterrestrial. Yes, it could be higher spiritual beings that you're dealing with.
Well, and you know what, it could be, might I say, and be very general with my words, extraterrestrials in this dimension or in our universe. One of the quotes that Marcello Bacci from Direct Radio Voice received was, "We have very capable ways of communicating to you from our planet." That was a quote that Marcello Bacci received, and alluded to the fact that some of this communication, I don't know how much of it that he was receiving, they seemed to allude to the fact that their planet was somewhere in our universe and they were communicating. And there's different theories on we'll go into different thermal properties and discuss how it's possible sound can travel through space. A mechanical wave can travel through a vacuum. And there's now new evidence saying that that might be possible. Even though, as we know, there's no sound, we don't hear anything in space. There's no oxygen. Sound is a mechanical wave and needs oxygen to move. And there's theoretical research being conducted that sound may travel through space to some degree.
Yeah. And yes, I mean, and Pete, don't worry about that. I mean, yes, there's
is that a good thing?
No, because I mean, it's not only, there's been a lot of people that have stated this, so it's not something new.
We're a little out there though, Rob.
Hey,
our show's a little.
When you're getting messages at 4:00 in the morning to wake up, and because they have a message for you, and all of a sudden you get a message thrown at you, and you do what you were told in that message, and all of a sudden now you're getting communication. What the hell is that?
Right. No, I know. I joke a lot, but you're right. I mean, I get it. I get it.
You know, and it's weird. You know, and I've solidified what I'm getting with other people that are dealing with higher learning, and they're like, how in the hell did that come to you? You know, we've been trying to get this, this to happen. It's been talked about, but nobody's been able to do it. How did you get it done?
Everyone's like, Rob, really? Like him? Like, no, I'm just, I'm just playing, dude. I'm playing. And objectively, I haven't received any of this type of communication you have, but you've given it to me for peer review, objectively. Right. And I've used my ears. I've been trained as a sound engineer, and I'm like, I hear what you're hearing. I'm hearing the evidence, meaning you're like, Josh, am I hearing this? Validating. I'm like, no, that's what's coming through. How it's happening, I don't know, but it is. So even my objective ears can tell you the same thing. Well, in your Saturday show, I mean, there's 40 other people that are saying the same thing. So it's real.
No, so it's very, very, very strange. And that's why I think, I have become very emotional when I talk about it. I mean, the other day I was tearing up.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I was like literally talking about it and tears were rolling down my face.
I can hear it in your voice when you call me, when you talk to me. There are multiple facets to our friendship, but I hear it. I can feel it. At the very least, I'm not a psychic medium at all, but I feel that from you. You can tell. You can tell.
Yeah. So anyway, there's that.
There's that.
I mean, I just have to laugh at myself. And yes, I might sound crazy, but you know what? I'm open. I'm honest. I have nothing to hide.
We have no motive.
I have no motive.
We're not. I mean, Sam's our sponsor, but we're not paid. We're not paid. We're not paid to say anything when we review something. I mean, this is completely a passion project. We do this because we want to do it. So we have no motive here. It's what's happening. It's objectively what's happening. And we've seen throughout ITC history and with people with psychic abilities, similar things have happened. I'm not saying exactly what has happened to you, but in regard to Marcello Bacci had very parallel experiences to what you're experiencing.
That's funny because, I mean, like I said, I know.
Hi, Darcy.
I know and heard a lot of things that Frank said, a lot of messages that Frank said to certain people. Um, it sounded a little crazy, but
Sure.
there's a lot of parallels that I'm like I said, all of a sudden Frank's came to my head, and I'm like, why am I thinking about him all of a sudden?
Right.
But there was a lot of parallels that
Right.
happened. And okay, but why is it happening to me? I'm you know, I developed something, I did it, and it was fun while it lasted, and now I was given this, and I'm like, what the hell do you want me to do with this? Alls I know is I can't share it.
It's a fine line to walk. It really is. Depending on how it's shared, depending on the method by which you go about sharing it.
Yeah.
It can be misunderstood. I get it.
No, I know. And it's, I think if honestly, I think if the field and everybody else was in a different mindset and in a different place, I think it would be different. Where I could probably share some of the information, but it was like I was given this information for a reason, and I'm still waiting to find out what that reason was and what I'm supposed to do with it. But right now, I just what I'm feeling, what I'm hearing, I just feel like I'm supposed to keep it a secret and for until a point in time.
Right.
There's certain people that know about it, certain people that are talking to me about it and researching it, but that's as far as it's going. And it's not going to be shared with anybody.
It's brave. I give you this to open yourself up and be so vulnerable and talk about this on the Saturday show. And listen, there's other people that have witnessed some of this on the Saturday show, and to talk about it here. Very brave. You're very vulnerable. I don't know that I could, I wondered if I ever stumbled onto something or created something, the research I'm doing with what I'm conducting. What if I did find something? What would I do with it? Let's say, oh my gosh, I found a way. Let's say my experiments were successful, Rob. What would I do? Where would you go? And so I commend you for coming out and with our group, the people who know you and know us, and say, listen, this is what I found. This is what's coming about. This is what will eventually, I'll be at a point where I can share this with you. But right now I need to identify more of what it is and what's going on. But I commend you for that, because I don't know that I'd be able to put myself out there like that, even though we're on the podcast,
I mean, but the whole thing, like now being approached about it and things like that, I mean, it's put it at a totally different level.
As your friend, I can only support you as your friend, but even with the knowledge and research and resources I have in my experience, I don't know how to advise you from this point.
Yeah. I mean, and I just said, I said what I needed to say, but I don't know what's going to happen after that. I just don't. But anyway, I know that there's some people watching on what's happening. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Yeah. There are strange times. But I can tell you this, we're going to follow this. We're going to keep documenting this. Rob, you've been very open about it, and we'll continue to address it. We'll continue, you're doing examples of it on our Saturday show, on your Saturday show. Well, I'm moderating now, so I'm going to say our Saturday show, but it's your Saturday show. It's your show. But I feel like a lot too, we've learned so much from our audience, and we're going on 3 hours, and it's because we're lucky enough to have friends join us on the show that contribute information back and share experiences. And even tonight, so many people that have filled in gaps and holes in my information. And I feel like it's, in a way, it's, you're getting this communication, but it's almost a community effort. We're in the sense that we're all supporting each other and supporting this new research. It's really incredible how it's all coming together. And that everyone talks about para-unity, but maybe it's just in smaller groups or in smaller forms.
There's no such thing, because there's too much.
I meant like a smaller community, like our small community in the show.
I can see it happening in small groups,
Right,
but in a whole, it will never happen, because there's too much ego involved. if everybody can get past the ego and let all the jealousy go. And you know what's funny is the jealousy is more here. I see it anyway. I don't know, but I mean, this is what I observe. It seems like the jealousy is more here in the States than it is in the UK. I've seen people in the States that get so jealous of other people that what they're doing in the UK that they've attacked people in the UK and basically chased them away from doing a good thing. And it's sad.
Yeah, I don't know if I can comment on that.
No, I mean,
But you're right.
And you don't have to. I mean, but it's just sad on how, there's so many things that happen here. I don't know if it's a cultural thing here in the States. But it's not, I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, I could go into different topics or different areas that have nothing to do with, the paranormal. I'm just talking about human interaction in general. It's sad on what we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and the whole thing with jealousy and everything else is just so sad that it has to carry over to something else where we're basically all looking for the same, we're all looking at the same end goal. We're trying to find out, we're trying to find answers. We're trying to research all the same information. Why does it have to be why does there have to be so much hate and jealousy because of that? I mean, it's crazy.
I'd like to get a sociologist on the show, really to discuss sociological implications of ITC and how it's perceived in different cultures. Because it's not only about, we talk about psychoacoustics, psychoanalysis, and how we perceive this communication coming in, but really how much of it is influenced by our culture. Why are some cultures practicing ITC that are so heavily wanting to investigate negative and dark entities, and some don't really get that evidence at all? You know what I'm saying? There's so many other factors to, again, what influences a person and their energy and their intent and what they manifest when they're conducting this research. It's not black and white. Not everyone gets the same answers. Not everyone gets the same. The phenomena is happening to people who research it. I mean, you will go looking for it, you will find it. But a lot of the results are different for many different people. Very interesting.
No, it is. And that comes back to a different point, to where somebody was commenting earlier about, doing
Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, with
Kevin. No, Kevin's right.
No, with Kevin even saying, do we do some type of meditation or anything, before, or any type of rituals before a ghost box session? But I mean, I think a lot of people do. I mean, I know me, I surround myself with white light. Yes, I do mantras. I do meditations. A mantra is basically calling upon spirit, and calling upon spirit to, and then you give your intent. So with me, I'm trying to help people communicate with loved ones, or communicate with people that they've lost, or communicate with people that they're trying to get answers from because they want closure or answers. So, when I do a mantra, that's what I call upon. It's basically trying to do a ritual that I do. Anyway, so everybody does something different.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. And everyone's doing what they know is best for themselves. And maybe that is the answer, is listening to your intuition, following your own higher self, your guidance that you feel is natural and best for you. I mean, really, this is uncharted territory. And what I would default to is trusting your instincts and knowing what works right for you. And I know you surround yourself with white light, and that works. And you're comfortable with that, and your results speak to that proper decision, that good decision you made to do certain things before and after, or during, or even in your everyday life. help facilitate this communication. Gaynor, thank you so much for joining us. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Forgive me if I'm not. Bang from Indonesia. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We normally don't go 3 hours, but sometimes I guess we do. I guess that's just a fact. We do. We have a lot of fun on the show, and we just go off on topics. We just follow the flow. And thank you for joining us if you're new here.
Right. But anyway, well, thank you, everybody.
So we are capping it off at 3 hours.
Yeah, we're going to cap off.
Okay.
Because I know that Josh has little ones there. And
I finally heard the footsteps stop a while ago upstairs. I think they've finally tired themselves out. So
okay. All right. I just didn't want to keep you.
No, it's fine. You know what? I just, podcasts, people say, keep it to an hour, keep it to 2 hours. And here we are at 3 hours, but we're still, our friends and our audience are still interacting. So I'll go as long as they want me to. I mean, this is important to us. This is a passion. This isn't about, this has nothing to do with paychecks. It never will. So we go as long as you want us to. But Rob, you're the captain of the ship. There can only be one captain. So you call the shots.
I'm reading Kevin's comment.
Oh, Donna, I thought we did mention you. I brought you up, Donna. Thank you all. You didn't mention me. No, Donna, I did. I think I said hi. Oh gosh, I'm so tired, but I feel like I did bring you up. If not, please come back next time and I will highlight your comments and engage you more. I'm sorry. I don't want to do that to anyone who's taking time to join this show. Thank you, Kanga, as always.
No, Kevin. I mean, yeah, we all came into this,
Donna, I'll do better next time. I promise.
We all have our reasons why we got into this field. But
I'm sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, and that sucks. It's always sad to see, when people lost somebody, that they're trying to find answers that way when something tragic brought him into the field.
I'm not laughing at what Kevin said.
I know. I see what you're talking
about. Okay. I never related the two, but I mean, I guess there's parallels there. Yeah. This show is so random, you guys. This show is so random. Oh my God. Donnie, yeah, come back. I'll make it up to you next time.
Raina, no. Yeah, I mean, I say things like that because I just not, as you know, I'm open and honest, but I'm kind of private when it comes to certain things. And that's why, publicly, I just like, I don't want to sound crazy, but, and then I say something.
Yeah. Well, in certain circles, it's not crazy.
Wayne, I heard you got into it for the porn at
Donna. Oh, God.
At Linda Vista. I heard you were a pimp at Linda Vista. That's why you got into it.
I don't know about this. You talk about people hooking up when they go investigating. I just don't understand. I just don't understand how that even comes up. Like, hey, run the EVP recorder. You want to go make out? Like, those two things just don't, I don't get it. Donna, hold me to it. Come back next time. And I will be responsible for highlighting your comments. I will.
All right, guys. So we're going to hit it.
Thank you all for joining us and sacrificing your time and being interactive with this show. Thank you for making it what it is. And next time, if you want us to go 4 hours, we'll go 4 hours. If you want us only for 1 hour, please let us know. We're here for you. We want to make the show what you want it. Simple and plain.
Exactly. All right. So good night, everybody. And thanks for tuning in.
And you better beat the Saturday show. We better see you all this weekend. We'll blow your minds. Show up.
Exactly.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.